Board, Planning Board, January 7th, 2019, time of 7 PM has arrived, and we are meeting here at Norwood Town Hall, 566 Washington Street, room 12. The first item is the approval of the minutes from 12/17/2018. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at those?
I had one question.
Yes.
We continued the public hearing on the drive-through for the liquor store, Providence Highway.
Did we continue or close it?
Close
the
it.
public hearing.
Continued public hearing.
It was a continued.
Oh, and then we closed it on the next page? And when are they coming in front of us? Do we know?
Next time, I
The
think.
The 28th.
Okay. So does it say? Okay. All right, that was my only question.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Right, second, I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Approved. Now, I guess we have in a few minutes, we have the
You can
approval
go-
of Power Lane subdivision decision.
Pat has a decision. We made one correction to it. The chairman noted that he thought that one of the conditions should have said west, not east. And so we corrected that this afternoon.
And you did check with them, you might not.
Yep. We got compass out and we changed that. So there's one little change to one of the conditions where we reference a fence that needs to be placed above a wall of varying height that could be 5-6 feet high. So we wanted to make sure that they put a fence above that so nobody walking through the woods suddenly drops down 6 feet
6?
for safety.
Yeah. The change was on.
The wall would be of varying height, and it went up to like 5.5 feet high, so I thought we needed a fence for safety.
But isn't that wall then that goes down into the Neponset?
Yep. That's the one.
There's two walls, so if the power lane extension goes like this, up above, there's gonna be a lower retaining wall, couple feet high, and that's where he's planting the giant arborvitaes. And then to the right of the road, that's where there's sections of walls along that slope of varying height, and that's where they need to put the fence to make, for public safety.
In between the walls.
But it does drop into the Neponset River.
It goes down to the river.
You're with me on it? We walked that. It's a nice little drop. And that was whose idea? Oh, good job.
Okay, so that was on page 3. It was the conditions of approval number 2. And instead of east side, it was just changed to west side of the site. So everyone's had a chance to look at this?
One other, may I?
Yes.
Paul, was prior to start of construction, was this what we had talked? Planning board with proof of recording? Is that what we're gonna ask each applicant to do? Give us proof that it's recorded?
Yeah, that's a standard condition.
But remember, we were having a little issue with that way back a couple years ago, and we put it in, and so that's a standard. Okay.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Number 3, they weren't recording these, remember?
Yeah, off and on, there's been problems with that.
So from here on in, we'll be doing it.
The problem that I've had with that related to subdivisions, I haven't had the issue come up here in Norwood because there aren't many subdivisions, but at my last job, we had like a 26 lot subdivision, and the developer, a fairly well-known developer on South Shore, deliberately never recorded the plans because then they would be assessed differently as 26 buildable lots. And so they don't go record it, so they didn't start construction for a couple of years later, and the town did not receive the same tax revenue for a big parcel of land as it would have for a 26 lot subdivision.
Really? Not 6 to 1, half dozen to the other.
No, that, you know, they assess it differently. A project has value, monetary value. The cost of, doing the design and the permitting really has a price tag that a lot of people don't really understand, but the value between here's a 30-acre lot and here's a 30-acre lot that's been divided up into 26 lots is much more valuable.
Well, it wasn't just for subdivisions. Remember, we had an issue
Yeah.
with the,
Yes,
we're gonna record everything so that that plan wasn't the one they showed up with and said, this is the wrong plan, so we are doing that?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, as far as this goes, we did approve it, is that correct? And the only thing now would be to, we would have to sign it.
Yes.
Is that it? But we would have to take a motion to sign it, I guess.
Sign the certificate of action.
Any other questions regarding this? Yes.
The CO, is that yours now, or is that Mark's? Or are we, the left and right hand know what they're doing? He's gonna look at this and talk to you before,
Can you tell me what you're,
yeah, sorry.
we're referring to?
Prior to insurance, the last certificate, of the last certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall notify the planning board and request a final inspection. The planning board will notify the building inspector if all conditions of subdivision plan have been satisfied.
Yeah, I don't think I've put that in a decision before, and so we just wanted to memorialize it, that they do need to get a final inspection from the town engineer and myself.
And if we had done this with Mr. Gomes, we might not be here now, maybe.
Yeah, actually, I don't think he's gotten his final CO, but it's a way to make sure that everything's done before there's a final sign off on the last unit.
For, you know, for them as well as us, then everybody's not saying, oh, you didn't, and, oh, yes, I did. And-
Yeah, and it's definitely in a developer's benefit to have a letter that says that, you know, it's been inspected and it's all approved.
Okay. I got number 8, I got my trees with the orange tags on them. Bree and I'll be up there every few days, checking it out. That's it. I'm done.
Any other comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion that we approve the Powell Lane subdivision decision by signing it.
Well, it has been approved.
You just have to,
You just have to sign the plan.
To sign the certificate
Yeah.
of action.
Do you want all of these signed and passed back to you?
We want 3 original copies signed,
okay,
The 3 that I brought,
okay.
not the ones that we
not the ones
put
you
in your
have.
packets, but
All
I
right, then
think I
this
gave
is,
you one.
this is one of mine.
Just had to kill more trees? What the hell's the matter with
They
these?
had to
Okay,
be
Mr.
corrected.
Chairman, I'll make a motion that we sign this certificates.
Do I hear a second?
Second. Second.
Second.
From,
Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed?
Sign away.
5-0. Excuse me, 4-0. One absent.
And when is Mr. Gomes' guy gonna come in front of us? On the 28th also?
Yes.
I'm not sure. There has been some progress made. They did some excavating. And what the town engineer said was there were boulders and common fill, is how he described the material.
When did he do that? Because I was up
The
there,
holiday week,
yeah, I think I was up there Christmas week, maybe.
was Mrs. Claus making deliveries?
I don't know, Mrs. Claus. No, I go back and forth to Stop and Shop and just there to bother everybody.
You didn't take a left when you left Stop and Shop.
No.
Mr. Chairman, was a question?
What was the vote?
Excuse me?
What was the vote, sir?
4-0. 4 with one absent. And the
But he voted to approve it, so we're just signing, right?
Okay.
It's just,
Yeah, so it's a 5-0 vote, he's just not here to sign it. He's sunning himself.
Wish I could see.
Me too.
Thank you. You got one more?
all set?
You two? The third one?
Do you have the third one?
I do? Sorry. Oh, I threw my other one over there.
Make sure it's the right one.
You can swap out that page if it is.
Oh, but I didn't use mine? Sorry.
It should be yours.
Can I,
Thank you.
we have a minute, can I give a progress report on my sign bylaw update, people? I've gotten one almost confirmed, but I didn't have a date that I could give her that we could, bring one business person, so I've got feelers out there, ask everybody, this is what it's about. I've only got one person to call me back so far, but I will be more diligent in the next couple of weeks to get confirms and then schedule. How much notice do I have to give you to bring them into the board? Because I have to bring them in to sit in front of you guys, right?
Yeah, like a week, like the Wednesday before Monday meeting
Okay,
is when we finalize the agenda.
okay. I called a bunch of people. No, one lady got back to me, is interested, but I haven't gotten any other confirms.
Okay.
Is that voting day?
I don't know. April 1st, that voting
It's
day?
April 1st, the voting day. I know we have the planning board meeting dates.
Is it the town election day?
I believe it is.
And are we barred from having a meeting then?
We generally do not have a meeting
On election day, no.
on election day.
All right, we'll check the schedule.
It may not be for the
I
following.
think we're scheduled on the first, but we'll have to change it.
I don't know, election day may
Double
not be
check,
the
double check with the
7th,
town clerk on the voting day, but I think it would be,
Is it the first Monday of the month?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
7:10, having arrived, we have the draft mixed-use zoning bylaw amendment, downtown overlay district, and Ted Brovitz is here to tell us about that. Come on up.
Thank you. I have a PowerPoint, if you wanna, do I plug it in, or what do I do? Do I sit on my computer, or do I just?
Yeah, I think we need your laptop.
Oh, we do? Oh.
And this should be ready to go. Is that the bag for that?
Yes. What are you looking for, Paul?
Another cable.
I think it's attached to it for the computer.
This isn't the,
No, I got it. I don't have it.
It's a Mac.
No, it's just an HDMI. You have that?
I have HDMI cord,
You have an HDMI?
like, for iPad. Or for
Huh?
that. I have like an iPad.
Will that work in
Charger?
here? Will it
I don't know.
connect to that? Probably
Probably not.
You need that connector.
Uh,
not. Okay.
I thought we had more than one cable.
Yeah, the newer computers don't have
yeah.
that type of port anymore.
Okay. I think there's it has a USB port on it. I'm not sure if that's.
Well, it's got USB, but
Yeah.
this is different. This is,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if you had like a USB. If I don't know if it takes that.
oh, will it go, is there a slot for
I
that?
think there is.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
What does it all mean? That little chippy thing?
cords and
Oh, look, he's going
plugs
looking at me.
and connections.
All that information, all on that little,
No, it's scary. It's definitely scary.
it's all about you.
Scary.
You usually have to get your papers out and all that.
There's no family pictures on
I was just thinking, this checklist could get
Town clerk, yeah. They actually come out pretty.
Just back to top.
Pretty quick. I thought I had plenty of time. As a matter of fact, I gotta fill out my thing.
It's not in that
My
folder,
campaign
but it's in the-
finance thing
it's
for
on
the
the-
state.
On the drive.
Yeah, it's on the drive.
Do you do it every year?
What? The campaign finance thing? No, just the year you run.
Okay.
Even though I spent, $0,
Zero.
you
Yeah, you do
still
that
have to fill it out.
Top, it says previous page.
Yeah.
Let's get a 15-year-old kid in here.
You could probably need a 15-year-old kid to do this.
Wait, we got a
Patrick can
kid
do
right
it.
here. I got a guy right here that's
It's weird, it's not. Next page.
farther than I would've.
Uh-oh, something happened.
I think that's gonna work.
Do you have it on your computer?
It's on my computer, yeah. Yeah,
Can we look at the screen?
I suppose we could, yeah.
So do I have a?
How am I gonna do this?
Hmm?
No,
Nope,
all right.
so. All right.
Are you giving us a verbal report also?
I guess I am. Yes, I was, yeah.
Okay.
But I was gonna use the slides to show that, so. I guess we'll skip the PowerPoint for now.
Well, can the camera pick up off the computer? Can you pick up his screen if he has it like a,
Well, you all won't be able to see it either.
well, if you set it over there, where does the camera come from?
They're on the walls.
Okay. So if you turn it this way, won't one of the cameras pick it up?
I mean, he's got one behind him. I don't know if that picks him up.
I think we gotta focus on the presentation for the planning board.
Okay.
Our main objective is for you all to understand what's on the screen.
So you're gonna turn that this way and we're gonna look at it?
My deadline.
You can pull a chair up closer if you want.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You wanna see, ma'am, or you want? Get close, we'll be comfy.
Come on down. I'm just gonna get a kick out of this. Mr. Oakman made me sit on the floor, so this is a treat.
Well, right now you're the only one that can see it, so.
Yeah, so this is kinda neat. I guess you'll get me. Thank you.
Well, anyways, I'm Ted Brovitz.
Hi, Ted.
How you doing? I've been working with Paul and the department for about 3 or 4 months now on this zoning amendment mixed-use overlay district. And leading up to putting together the draft bylaw, what we did is, look at what the existing, trends and conditions are downtown, look at the property records, try to determine, what we have today as far as residential and mixed-use development, and actually we have quite a bit, as it turns out, there's 43 properties. And
In this little red box.
in that red box in the commercial business district, or the central business district, there's 43 properties with residential or mixed use, residential and commercial. This process goes back to, the original master plan where, about 6 or 7 years ago, we put together an overall series of plans and recommendations for changes to the zoning, different types of economic development initiatives, and other things that sort of boost the economy and the vitality of downtown. So this is one of,
Are you the Cecil Group?
I was with the Cecil Group at the time, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the project manager. Is that it? Let's see.
USDG?
I don't know, we'll find out.
Is it still on?
Is that off?
No?
Oh, there it
Almost
is.
there. Oh, yeah.
You guys will have to
You guys
move.
are a
You're in the,
little bit in the
like,
way.
you're in the,
Yeah, we will have to see if it works.
It's the same screen that was on before.
oh,
It's going to use too.
Oh, let's see.
I know, it's purple rain.
Really, it goes up to Beacon Street? Isn't this the library?
Yeah. Doesn't follow the property lines. There's like a straight shot. across
Yeah,
the
why
top.
is... This is business districts, all these residentials right here.
but a lot of them are businesses, I think. They're older homes that have been
This is the
converted.
one up on the hill. It's just a
Yep.
haunted. 35 is,
How can I
I think that's weird that that is.
This button cannot be.
Sure, try this.
So this is the Civic, and this is the DPW, right? If that's Nahan Street. So
We'll do it?
this is Stop and Shop, and this is all, right? But that's not in it.
Yeah, it's not downtown.
But we go all the way over here and include all of this stuff. That's kind of,
Computer can't shift it to on, huh?
and then we go over here and take in these residential. I think it should go like
Want
that.
to shut down the PowerPoint and then try it? Are you on USB? Searching sources. Is it the USB or is it the, is that some other?
It's in USB-B mode. All right.
All right.
You have two ports on yours? Mine does.
I've got two, yeah.
Why don't you
I've
try,
got one on this side.
try the other, I mean, just for giggles.
Right, the other?
Throw it in the other one.
Okay.
signal.
No signal at all. Okay, all right, well, all right.
Sorry about that.
Try and make your projection button. So if you do F, function F8.
Hit yes to button, well, you had something up there.
I did.
You just had a screen that said press yes for,
We can't see that, and we can't see the documents. And my boss is next door. I'm gonna need to be done 40,000.
all right. Power off, yes, okay, whatever, all right. All right, let's go, we're moving on here.
All right, so I've been working with Paul for the last few months and basically trying to find what the trends and conditions are downtown as well as what the opportunities are for residential and for mixed use. And, you know, in terms of residential, looking at opportunities in terms of older properties, deteriorated properties, underutilized properties that could be places where you might want to see a certain amount of mixed use or new development, new residential development, as well as some of the one-story buildings where there's maybe an opportunity to add a residential on top of it. We have a series of one-story buildings on Washington Street and some of the side streets that are attractive. They're, you know, very nice one-story commercial buildings, but maybe an opportunity for a second story for residential. So I've drafted up the bylaw based on those opportunities, those possibilities. And this bylaw is replacing what's on the books today as the downtown apartment overlay district. So it's 9.4, it's replacing the apartment overlay district.
It's not replacing the central business district.
No, it's an overlay district. So the central business district is a base district.
Right, so this is gonna encompass the entire central business
That's right.
district though.
That's
So
right.
basically, we're overlaying the entire central business district.
Right, that's right, exactly,
One for one,
right.
okay.
Right. However, the way it's set up, it's not necessarily tied directly to downtown. You could put this in other places in Norwood if you choose later on. You could even expand it. So for example, the central business district goes to the north side of Broadway. The south side is not in that district, it's in a different district, as is the areas that are just over the tracks. And there you've seen, you know, some redevelopment in those areas as well, like the Lennox Landing, the Lennox Crossing. I always get those two mixed up. With Lennox Station,
Is this north?
yeah.
Is this what you're saying?
So-
North is over here?
Right, so there's an opportunity to expand beyond the central business district boundaries in the downtown area, but also, if there's other, you know, village centers or, you know, industrial spaces or whatever that are underutilized, you know, you could, in the future, through town meeting, extend it to those areas as well. So it's a floating overlay district, you know, to start with in downtown and see how it does, and then take it from there, possibly in other places. So, under section 9.4.1, the purpose, basically the purpose, which is, you know, supported by the downtown master plan and some of the other things that the town has taken on over the last number of years, is to, you know, provide sort of a live-work environment, development opportunities in the downtown areas. You know, it's a pedestrian-oriented district, meaning that it's a nice, attractive, you know, place for people to stroll, and we want to sort of reinforce that, but at the same time, provide opportunities for people to live down there so that they can not have to use their car, they can go to work downtown, they can work at the hospital, post office, town hall, or other places. Plus, you know, you can be within walking distance of shops and restaurants and other services. So it's a good opportunity to not only help the investment in private property downtown, but also in providing opportunities for people that aren't necessarily looking for or can afford to get into a single-family home in town. These would be smaller apartments or condominium-type units, which would be allowed. We're looking for, in the process of allowing all this by special permit, we're looking for, you know, high-quality development. And we're looking for attractive and active open spaces. So rather than your typical zoning ordinance which says that, you know, 20% of your lot has to be, you know, open space, leave it at that without any specifics, we would require that become an integral part of the development plan. that they do something attractive. If you're in an urban environment like we are here, that could be things like having a plaza in front of your building, you know, a place where people could sit, outdoor cafes, which you have a lot of now, rooftop terraces for, you know, people in the building to gather. And
Oh.
those types of, you know, active open spaces rather than what typically happens with, you know, old open space, which is, it comes in the back of your lot and it's just sort of a no man's land. So
And attractive's a little ambiguous. Are we gonna be specific?
it's specific.
It is?
Because there are different types of open spaces that you're allowed to provide as part of your development. Everything from a.
And we're gonna
pocket
be
park-
specific in here?
It's in here, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's basically it. We're looking for, you know, an appropriate mix of use, you know, combination of commercial and residential, vibrant open spaces that are part of that development, and, you know, the opportunity to enhance property values and reinforce the historic fabric of the downtown area. We don't wanna wipe out the historic buildings, but we really want to make sure that they're well protected and there's an opportunity to reinvest in those as well. So when I talk about those one-story historic buildings, we don't want them to be knocked down, we want them to be added to up above if that's something that's, that the property owner thinks is a viable solution to staying vibrant. So as we mentioned, the district in section 9.4.2 is, for now, it's the central business district, but again, this can be put in other places if the town and the planning board decide it's a good idea down the road. Applicability, everything requires a special permit under this, and you have to go through site plan review. It's also encouraged that before you submit to the planning board for site plan review, that you have meetings with department heads, you get some feedback initially on the quality and the, you know, the appropriateness of your development project, so that going into the planning site plan review, you're in sort of good shape.
I just want to see, do we have extra copy of this for the press? I know that they've taken notes and it might be helpful. I know they can't, we don't have, oh, you've got one?
Oh, thank you
Should
very
take
much.
mine, so.
Okay.
Okay?
Can I ask Ted one
Sure,
question?
yeah, sure.
This overlay, was this the one that we've got in set now? This particular red dotted line?
Yeah, the area reflects the area that's currently within the
Central business?
downtown.
Yeah,
It's a central business district.
right.
So that's what he has highlighted on the map.
So, we kind of, why didn't we bump over here? These are all businesses.
Because what we're starting with is the central business district. If we did not go beyond the boundaries of the existing central business.
Which has been laid out previously.
Yeah,
Okay.
however, the area that this bylaw covers has not yet been agreed upon. This is our first discussion, really.
Okay, that's my question. So we don't have this laid out someplace else. So are these lines changeable a little bit?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think
That's a good question.
it
I
will
mean,
be
you know,
appropriate for us to have a discussion about whether or not to bring it all the way to the railroad tracks along Broadway, or just leave it as is, or extend it. And so that is a discussion that we should have.
Okay.
Yeah.
When should we have that?
After we.
After you're done.
Yeah. But let's
Okay.
make a note of that, you know, boundaries of the overlay district.
Okay.
Whether we want, if you like the overlay district, you think it's appropriate, then do we want to stick with just the central business district, or do we want to extend it in certain areas?
Okay,
Where
I've
there's
got,
an opportunity
right.
for reinvestment, redevelopment. So the zoning map, can I borrow that for a second, since? So basically, this is the map showing the yellow area is the central business district, and then the striped area is the mixed-use overlay district, okay? So, now, this is not your typical overlay district map, all right? So we've got these red lines that go down Washington Street from one end to the other. And what that's saying is that on the frontage of Washington Street at ground level, you have to maintain commercial uses. We want to make sure we preserve our commercial corridor for, you know, active commercial uses rather than it becoming a series of residential buildings and not having the same, you know, curb appeal to pedestrians that are shopping or looking for restaurants, that sort of thing. We really have a nice cluster of shops and restaurants, and want to make sure that opportunity or remains. So it's fine, you know, to have it up above the ground floor or behind it, but on those sidewalks facing Washington Street, we wanna make sure we preserve that area for commercial development. The other line that's up here is the green line, and that is the transition boundary. So if you look in your bylaw under section 9.4.6, on page 4, you'll see that because this is a boundary where you're going from single-family residential to fairly dense mixed use, we want to make sure that there's not an impact from development in the central business district. So we are requiring that there's an additional setback and a screening and landscaping requirement, and that buildings that are on the overlay district side are scaled back so that the visual impact is mitigated. We don't have those rubs between, single-family homes on small lots and new mixed-use development.
Where would who would own that buffer?
The buffer, well, that depends. Some parts of the boundary follow property lines, but some of it is straight across and bisects, two or three different properties. So it really depends, where you are in the district. But basically, if you're doing development on the overlay side, not in the single-family residential, you'd be responsible, if you're doing development, to provide that buffer.
And you can zig and zag around here, right? That green line can zig and zag in and out of residential, can it not?
No, it's a boundary up against the residential zoning district.
So if one of the properties within this overlay district is right on that boundary line where the heavy green line is, they would need to provide an additional buffer because there's a single-family residential zone on the other side of it. So that heavy green line reflects where they would have to provide a better form of buffer in terms of fence or vegetation in that area.
And would that also be a certain depth from where they could build to?
Yes.
Or is that,
Yeah.
It'd be a 50-foot depth, and then at that depth, the height of the building could only be 25 feet. So basically, you're going down and meeting that residential district. So you're screening it, you're setting back, and the building can only be so high.
so they'd be
So it's a
required to do
transition.
they'd have to throw some screening in?
Yeah, it's a fence and landscaping, yeah. That's what we were showing under.
So basically, you're not intruding on them.
Visually, you're not intruding on your
There's a
neighbors.
demarcation.
Right. Which there isn't there today.
No, there is not.
It's a little bit surprising, but there's not. Okay, so then under 9.4, I'll give you this one. Under 9.4.7, those are the general design standards. So again, because this is, by special permit and it's mixed use, we want to make sure that the development is going to be high quality. So we've developed a series of basic design standards for different types of projects. And all we're saying in this district is that because it's a well-established downtown and it's a pedestrian-oriented downtown, it's really important in terms of where the buildings are placed, that they're compatible with, the historic fabric, and that they're oriented towards pedestrians and, activity on the sidewalk. So we talk about placement, we're requiring the buildings to go up front, close to the sidewalk or on the sidewalk. We're requiring that parking go to the side or to the rear of the properties. We're requiring that the ground floor space on certain buildings be, good window space, open spaces, a certain amount of window space, so that it fits in with the current mix of buildings along Washington Street and other parts of the district.
Well, I think I'm a little lost, because these are all great requirements,
Okay? All right, so let me go through one by one. That was a
but we don't
general-
have any place, unless you tear something down in most of this,
Yeah.
you don't have any place to require all these wonderful buffers and that kind of stuff. We're requiring cornices and this, but and this corridor,
Mhm.
you got tear stuff down or add up.
Mhm.
And,
Right, so they're new buildings, yeah, you'd have to place them, which is consistent with the existing buildings.
Okay.
So if there was a gap between the buildings or one burned down, it was gonna be replaced, you have to refill it, or redevelop it, so that it's consistent with the rest of that street.
okay,
So, yeah, so it's not applicable in all situations, but, you know, for new development that occurs in district, you wanna make sure it's consistent with the historic fabric and
Okay.
pedestrian orientation.
Since we don't have many or any undeveloped vacant lots in the central business district, you put your finger on what would need to take place in order to trigger this bylaw. Either an addition up on a single-story building, they could add floors, which could be residential, or there could be a tear down of an existing building or buildings. And this is what developers do, they assemble properties, buy them,
make a big piece of pie.
raise them, and then do one of these. So this bylaw applies just to those limited circumstances, because we really don't have much vacant land here.
You mentioned the parking. Do we have something in there? I guess it's something we would have to figure out as a board, but we would want to look at sufficient parking, especially for the
Right.
apartments.
Right, so the parking requirements are such that they have to apply the current ones that are on the books. However, they can come to the planning board and ask for a reduction in parking for certain things. So for example, if it's a mixed-use building, and then they can demonstrate to the planning board that they really don't need as much parking as you're requiring, and they have to prove that by, well-founded standards that are out there. Then you can give them a waiver from those parking standards to a lower amount, based on, them demonstrating that they don't need that, so.
I think downtown, Joe, and, this, like I said before, you gotta look at this whole thing differently than we look at it now. And I know we can't throw out our existing zoning, but to do this, you gotta look at parking, and you gotta say, we don't, the purpose here is like a 40R, is people aren't gonna have a lot of cars here.
Right.
These people are gonna be walkers, or they're gonna be train drivers, train riders, or they may have a car.
Right.
Or they're gonna Uber.
Exactly.
And, things like that, and I love the whole concept. Washington Street aside, I look at the lower part of this district
Yeah,
as really, we have some older homes down there that are, now I know we have a few singles, but I would guess in this lower, from the railroad tracks up to the back of Washington Street, there aren't a lot of single-family homes. There's all 2 and 3 families. A lot of them are probably landlords that aren't there. There's a lot of, I don't want to use the right word there, but there's a lot of older areas down there that are ripe for redevelopment. And this is where I think you would see a guy come in and buy up a block or two, gut it, and put up a nice complex with a park and fountains and whatever you want to call it, or whatever,
But this
and uptown would be a great spot. There's a lot of buildings uptown that could be torn down and rebuilt. Washington Street is not historic in any sense.
Well, I respectfully disagree with you. It's not, it's not Beacon Hill.
No, but if a developer who owned, say a landlord who owned a block uptown,
Yep,
said, this is the whole thing of redevelopment, want to come in and say, I'm gonna tear this building down, I'm gonna redo it with something nice, we're gonna do retail, we're gonna do some apartments, it's gonna go to all these new standards that we're looking, this is the whole purpose of this.
but we do have some buildings that give us character from the 40s. They can put on top of that.
He addressed that at the beginning. If we wanted to do that, we
Right.
could do that, because we would preserve parts of the
Yeah,
building. And being able to take a building that's very old, that
Is not
needs-
being utilized.
or that needs some work in order to make it economically viable, you may have to add to it. You'd have to
Right.
do something like that. So they may have to add to it, but if something is truly historical, then you could you could look at it.
Who's gonna deem it historical? I mean, that's,
If
Well, there is
Washington
a-
State
There's a
Ban,
section, and Ted's gonna get to it in a few minutes, but there's
Okay.
a section on just how we would handle historic buildings, built prior to 1950 as the,
Right, right,
we'll let you continue.
yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay, good questions. Okay, so the general requirements, you know, things like, you know, placement of the building and orientation of the building, they have to have front doors facing Washington Street or the main corridors. You can have, let me see. Building step back so that, you know, the full height is, I think in this district, it's like 60 feet or something like that, it's very tall. But what we're saying is that, you know, if it's a tall building, 60 feet, I don't even think we have any 60-foot buildings in the district.
I don't think there are.
No, but what we're saying is that if you are building a 60-foot building for some reason, you can't go right up to the edge of the right of way, you have to step it back. Either set it back or step it back, so at the,
we can
Ed-
change that
Well,
if
I
we feel
didn't wanna-
60 is
yeah.
a little high, 40,
it may be a little high,
45.
right.
It's 40 now.
It's 40,
Is it
yeah,
40 now?
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
the hospital? Is the hospital the tallest?
Okay,
probably,
okay.
I would say.
I mean, that's one of the things we had gone over this, Paul and I, and the height was one of my main
Yeah,
considerations.
60's a little high, so.
And I'm thinking, you know, if you had a 4-story building, would that be 40 feet? Would it be higher?
Be a little higher, yeah.
A little bit higher?
40, 50, yeah.
10 feet a story.
Average 10 a story, maybe taller on the bottom floor, but it'd be shorter on upper floors. So,
And you also, I mean, we can have that 40-foot, but we could add to it if we could waive something, if it was a foot or two off, or.
Right,
Also, I
Right.
think that you talked about greenery, if we wanted to put, if someone wanted to put solar panels on or something, and or they had some ideas of what to do, and we thought it was interesting, we could raise it
Right.
if we needed to.
right, yeah. Those types of things that are on top of the building, you know, they wouldn't count as the building height. So, I mean, there are certain things you have to do in terms of hiding, like rooftop HVACs and that sort of stuff, but any kind of, you know, energy systems are on top of the building like that, you know, I think that would be.
That doesn't count?
I don't think that.
The
would count.
HVAC doesn't count as
No.
height?
No, no.
So you can go 40 feet, what are we, 40? 40 feet?
Yeah, yeah.
So we can go 40, and a pergola doesn't count, or a rooftop?
No, no, no. Rooftop
Okay.
terrace wouldn't count, no.
Okay, but our
Okay, 'cause
ladder
they're
truck
pergola.
only goes up 4 stories.
Well, I mean, what I was sort of setting it by was the Talbot building, right? That's a beautiful old building, it's what, 3 stories tall,
Yankee
it's probably. Yankee, it does, actually, you're right, it looks like Yankee Stadium.
Stand at the
I
library,
hadn't
you
even
think you're
thought
looking
of
at
that,
old
yeah.
Yankee Stadium.
That's the one at the
Okay,
corner of
it's got the
Guile.
same
Yeah,
bed and
Gene
everything. Yeah.
Ahern's building, yeah.
Huh. So that's sort of like, that's about the tallest, you know, mixed-use building in the district.
Do we know what the height is on that?
I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing it's probably 35, maybe 40.
It's around about 40, but we can check, see what
Yeah.
the building department has records on that.
So what I was doing is trying to figure out a system that says, well, you know, you're on the street, you know, if you're going up a full, I thought it was 60, but if it's 40, that's good. So you get to a certain point, say 35 feet, you step it back a little bit, so that 3rd story might be set back 10 or 15 feet and then goes up from there, which actually makes nice sort of terrace spaces for whoever's living up there. And a lot of towns are doing that now. They don't want to, they're trying to avoid sort of the canyon effect on their main streets. So they're saying that you either set it back or you step back those 2nd and 3rd stories, or 3rd and 4th stories. So you don't get that, you know.
No, I like that idea.
Too urban, yeah.
When we had looked through
The only
that,
disadvantage there is uptown for us, they may not have the room to go back.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Their
Yeah.
property lines are on the, especially on the north side of Washington Street. Their property lines are pretty close to the
Pretty
back. of
narrow,
the back.
narrow lots.
Yeah. Not a lot of depth to build back.
Yeah, yeah.
one of the things you also did was you had the entryways that were kind of recessed, and you had some, I mean, you naturally do that even if they're just small, but I think some of the examples you had were a little bit larger, where it's almost like a courtyard.
Yeah, so basically, if you've got a range, it depends on the building type. So if it's a mixed-use building or a a commercial building, well, it's a mixed-use building. Basically, you have a range from, right at the right-of-way, right on the sidewalk, or back a certain number of feet. And if you're setting it back, you have to use that space for open space, something that's publicly oriented, something like an outdoor dining area or a plaza, or something so that it contributes to sort of the vitality of downtown. You can't just put grass and shrubs in there or a fence like that. It's gotta be something that sort of extends the sidewalk into your development.
So if you had a restaurant on one side or the other? and-
Yeah, and they wanted to do an outdoor terrace, that would count as their open space. Because again, we're in an urban environment, so we're not looking necessarily for grass, we're really looking for something to enliven the downtown. So that's what we're saying, you can't just make it a private yard. If it's right between you and the sidewalk, it's gotta be something that sort of extends the sidewalk.
I don't think we're as cramped as the South End, and they've done a beautiful job
They've
with
done a
it.
great job, yeah.
And we're not as cheesecakey as they are.
No.
And they didn't tear down everything, and
Cheesecake?
cheesecake it's really dense,
Like
really
fudge.
dense, like fudge. Okay, we're not fudge. South End is fudge,
Right.
and there's places to sit and places to walk, and
You're the perfect scale, I think. Yeah, three-story buildings, 40-foot curb to curb. Nice
and
sidewalks.
I understand that this is business, and this is, the guys want to develop this. I think we've gotten where we are because that many years ago, we didn't have any restrictions, as many restrictions as we do on it. It's not appealing. So to get people to come downtown, yes, they need to make money on mixed use. It also has to be appealing. We also have to want to go there. We want to go to the South End, and because there's places to eat, places to shop, and parking's a nightmare. And we still go to the South End, and,
Yeah.
Derby Street or whatever, I mean, the Cape, there's a million places down there that are crowded that have managed to do, I mean, let's just take Dedham. You can't move in Dedham 4 nights a week. It's fabulous. I mean, the restaurants are open, you can go to a movie, you can go to bars, you can go, and a little bit of an issue with parking, but we can do this without bleeding into the neighborhoods.
The irony is that a lot of the best downtowns that people are attracted to all have a parking problem.
Go to Wellesley.
And people,
No.
people understand that if they're going out to dinner in one of these downtown areas, that they might not be able to pull up right in front of the restaurant and park. That they might have to park a couple blocks away and walk to where they want to go.
Go to
And
Needham.
this is what the successful downtowns have going for them, and a lot of them have this parking problem.
That should be our biggest problem.
Well,
We have
I-
plenty of parking, I'm sorry.
Well, it's like, in Wellesley, you're right, Wellesley got a parking problem because of one side of the square there is really tight, narrow lots, and there's not a lot of parking behind it, but on the other hand, on the north side of it, there's a lot of parking. What they're trying to do is get people to those lots, trying to improve their wayfinding system, so people that are not familiar with the square can get to those bigger public parking lots. Same with places like Hyannis. Hyannis 10 years ago started allowing mixed use, and all of a sudden, you're starting to get a lot of, condominiums and apartments downtown, a lot of them nurses and doctors that are working at the Cape Cod Hospital. And that's really supporting, year-round activity on Main Street, whereas 30% of the business is closed in the off-season. Today, they're open year-round, it makes a huge difference. But that's the same thing, there's a parking problem in Hyannis, but it's really not a parking problem if you know where you're going. So it's a matter of sort of better managing your parking system, that's all part of the.
Not everybody can park on Washington Street.
Not everyone can park on Washington Street,
That's
right?
just the way it is.
Right. Yeah, when we did the master plan, 6-7 years ago, we determined that there was plenty of parking,
1,000 spaces. in
plenty
the
of
downtowns.
parking, and just a lot of it was underutilized, especially the off-street lots. In Washington Street, except for the main block in the middle of town, that actually turned over pretty good. There was one sort of hot spot in the middle of town where everyone wants to park, but if you went down a couple blocks away from that, you were fine.
Years ago, I did a thing on parking uptown, and I parked at South Shore Plaza,
Mhm.
and I didn't go in the plaza, because I don't go in malls, but I walked from where I had to park to the entrance to the mall, And then I parked behind Babel's parking lot, which
Yeah.
nobody likes to park there.
Yeah, right.
Everybody says it's too far, and it was like half the distance.
It's a block, yeah.
It's a block.
It's a block.
Okay, and yet people will park at the Social Plaza and they'll walk half a mile to get to their car to go to whatever.
Right,
Jordan Marsh
That's
or whatever,
funny,
and, but they won't walk from Babel's parking lot downtown.
And one of the things about Babel's parking lot and the parking lot behind the stores there is it's a mess.
But that's not the issue.
And
Yeah,
the
that's
choice,
management.
The parking lot
That's-
needs to be repaved.
it needs to
does.
be
you know,
repaired.
there's no lights, there's no mark-off stuff. Babel's and now Lumber gets to use it. It's a public parking lot. Are they kicking in to redo that parking lot? You know, I'm just saying, it's our space and the businesses are using it. If it was more attractive,
Right.
in my opinion, I know I shouldn't say that, sorry, Helen, they're a mess. And it's not just that we don't want to park there, you know, there's ruts, there's no lights,
But
there's,
that's not the issue here. If you count up the parking spaces.
I understand that, but, you know, you
Ratio
go,
parking is actually
You should
pretty
write a
good.
letter to the selectmen about that.
But you're right, you know, parking's all about management, you know, making sure people know where it is, keeping them up to speed, keeping them safe. I mean, that's really the issue. It's funny when you mention that what you're talking about, because when I was in Hyannis trying to, you know, get mixed use in play there, I would draw a diagram of the Cape Cod Mall, and where you typically parked at the Cape Cod Mall, which was 3 times the distance of the most remote lot in downtown Hyannis.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. I mean, it was, you know, but the perception is because you can see it where you're going, that it's shorter. It really isn't shorter.
There's some great opportunities uptown. I've always felt, you know, that there's that walkway, and I know it's privately owned, and I wish we could do something with the owner between the old, where
Barber
David's
shop?
Bridal Shop
Yep.
was, and old Orient Brothers there, and there's that walkway.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to, and I'm in Needham a lot, and I look at what they did with the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right next to the train tracks to
Yep.
get the Fava restaurant in the back there? I mean, they've taken that, they put black wrought iron gate on it, they put some nice gooseneck lighting on that,
Yeah.
on that alleyway, and a couple of benches, and it's lit up at night, and
Yeah.
it's attractive, and they've got some nice signage in there. Put some flower pots in there, and it's beautiful.
That's all it takes.
And it's
yeah.
all it takes, and there's a nice walkway, and,
So the bylaw has,
yeah.
that option.
Right.
Um,
Pedestrian
There are-
passages.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
density bonuses that are, which would allow extra units to be constructed in exchange for some public
Public
benefits.
benefit, yeah.
And so if we wanted to look at that walkway, that alleyway, and say to the owner that might be trying to put a second, third story, well, you know, you could get some additional units in exchange for you agreeing to provide a pedestrian access easement through there.
Yeah.
That's a way to achieve that.
Well, if it's on his lot, right, then you could do it without the density bonuses by doing that pedestrian passage, you know, making an attractive connection between parking, whether it's public parking or not, and the public sidewalks. So you could spruce that up, you could put tables and chairs out there, put, you know, flower pots, all that stuff. But if you wanted to get higher density, he could do something more off-site, you know, so that there's another spot where you wanna, you know, upgrade an alley or a pedestrian connection. You could do parking, you could do open space, you know, there's, you know, you wanna do something with one of the parks downtown. There's that opportunity to make that part of the special.
I mean, we have such a beautiful bookends,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
And we really do, and it's
yeah, common is fantastic.
getting, I think Giles Square is beautiful too. Giles Square, they've redone it, they've put in, you know, the brick sidewalks, and they've cleaned it up, it's gorgeous. We have
Right.
two beautiful, beautiful,
so how do we get the town? Because I've talked to Mark Ryan about this, that parking lot by Babel's, you know, they need,
oh,
they need,
So the way, to answer your question is, we need to get that on the capital improvement plan.
Yeah.
Get it scheduled, it might be 3 or 4 or 5 years out, but we get it on that capital improvement plan, and then it gets scheduled as part of the work program, and it gets funded that way.
just so happens that we have two members of the capital outlay committee here, and it was on for last year. And it was on for last year, and actually, it was my motion at the capital outlay, and the board went, that we took it off last year's plan because we used the money for the, I believe, the school department to buy Chromebooks for the entire system, a one-shot deal. So it's on the plan. It is on the capital outlay plan to repave the Babel's parking lot, and I'm sure it'll
But-
probably be back on it this year.
That's not my question, because I understand it needs to be on capital outlay over here. But businesses are using that parking lot. Are they kicking in
I don't
to?
know. I couldn't answer that.
Businesses and customers.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand
so,
that.
It's there, that's what it's there for. We don't have any, we don't have a system in place that would, charge a fee for condo parking spaces or anything like that. And a couple of years ago, the downtown task force raised the question about parking meters and fees, and the police department did a great study for us looking at how other towns handled downtown parking. And after that study was reviewed, there was a consensus that nobody wanted to be the ones that said that we should be putting a bunch of parking meters in downtown Norwood.
We had them years ago. You know,
Right, they
20
didn't-
years ago, we had meters, we took them out, it was the best thing we ever did.
But I always would go to Babel's, and I know a lot of people would, because we could just park right there and pay a little more for your paintbrush and so on and so forth. That is an advantage to that business. Yes, we shop there, but I think that there should be some kind of,
Okay, so the Biblo's Restaurant or True Value
Yep.
Hardware or anybody
Yep.
else, did they pay for people who park in front of their store, their restaurant? Do they pay because people use the municipal parking lot behind their parking lot?
Thank
Do
you
they
for
pay
bringing that up.
Wait a minute, no, answer
Okay.
my question. Do they, I mean, so what's the difference between?
I think they should both, because I've gotten the question,
Well, if they're gonna pay, then they're gonna want restricted parking. They're gonna say, well, if I'm paying for parking, then I want 3 spaces, and those are for my customers.
okay, well,
I think you're
doesn't,
going down a slope, Debbie, that maybe there's some pepper in the peppercorn here, but
maybe there's some negotiation, because yes, behind Biblos, it says parking for Biblos, these 3 spots. Behind, True Value, which I wish they'd get the sign back up.
that's on their land, though. That's on private land.
That's on their
Okay,
land.
all right, let's go back over to, the laundromat, and then there's something else there, and they've got little signs up, parking for, okay? But it's public, I'm not trying to penalize them, because the businesses are what make downtown great. It could be better, but if we worked a little bit together, okay, it's kind of the capital outlay, we don't have any money, the school, okay, well, how about we work together, guys? This helps your business. We want to upgrade town. I mean, I don't park in that lot behind Biblos because I don't want to lose a tire. It's a mess.
Well, a lot of towns that have, parking management programs in place where the town and the business property owners, sharing the responsibility of improving the system or, maintaining the system. And Northampton's a good example. They don't even require on-site parking. In fact, they don't want you to have on-site parking because it just eats up space that's potentially taxable property, and they want to, keep things going vibrant. So
It is the Cambridge of the West, though. I mean, let's.
yeah, but there's a lot of small and mid-sized cities that are, doing a better job of managing their parking and working sort of public-private, relationships to make that happen, because it benefits everybody to have a good functioning
Right.
public parking system. So if you happen to have your own spaces on site, that's just an added plus. But
Yeah, I'm
even
not-
if you have your own spaces, you're still relying on the public spaces, whether they're on street or off street, to support your businesses.
We could
And that's why
maybe
it's a
work
downtown.
together.
It's a downtown, sort of a collective. It's like a mall without the roof,
Yeah.
Moving on.
Moving on. Okay, so, I think we're at this point, we're probably on section 9.4.8, which starts on page 8, but goes over to, page 9. So basically, as I mentioned, we don't have these general standards that apply to the overlay district. We have standards, dimensional standards, and design standards that are specific to different building types. Because we're only allowing, under this overlay district, we're only allowing 4 different building types. We're allowing townhouses, which are attached, single-family homes horizontally. We're allowing apartments and mixed multifamily buildings. We're allowing live-work buildings, which are a unit with, one commercial space and one residential space above it. So you own, it's basically owner occupied, so you may have a gallery downstairs or a law office, but you live upstairs. And then we have full mixed-use buildings, so basically, commercial at ground level and commercial residential above. So there's only 4 types that are allowed under this overlay district. So the standards the dimensional design standards are specific to those building types. So it's not like a regular zoning district where there's one dimension for everything. So for example, if it's a residential property, if it's an apartment, or if it's a townhouse, typically you'd have those buildings set back a little bit further, maybe set up a little bit, and that's for privacy reasons. You might have a little garden yard in front of it, you might have a stoop, leading up to a townhouse, but basically they're set back a little bit off the sidewalk for privacy. Whereas with a commercial or a mixed-use building, they're up close to the sidewalk or on the sidewalk because you want them to be connected to the people that are walking up and down the streets. And if they're set back, again, we talked about the idea that you have some publicly oriented private spaces, cafe seating, that what have you, so that it's engaging the pedestrians. So that's really, more of a publicly oriented building, as well as, the spaces that it creates, that are created in front of it. Also, with mixed-use buildings, we have a transparency requirement so that we've got good window space for people that are walking up and down.
Oh, that's what transparency requirement
Right.
is. Okay.
Question is-
So, yeah, if you've got questions, go right
No,
ahead.
no, it may not be involved in this, so I'm gonna let you continue. It's on the standards. I guess I'll throw it out there, maybe you'll address it at a later time. Somebody came in with a 40R,
Mhm.
because this is ripe for 40R area.
Yeah,
We still have to consider it, correct? I mean, would that throw, if they wanted to come in with their own design standards, or because of the district it requires, if this were to pass and
Good
these are the
question.
requirements, and somebody came in with a 40R,
this matches the density requirements of 40R, so you've got that level
That
of plane
level.
service right there. But you still have to go through the 40R process in terms of.
because they
affordability.
require their own overlay districts.
Yeah.
Right, so you'd have to designate a portion of this overlay district, or the whole thing, whatever you wanna do,
Yeah.
to a 40R, and you have to do property analysis, determine what your payments are gonna be from the state, your incentive payments from the state, so you have to determine that, the number of properties are likely to be developed for residential uses or mixed uses. So it's a sort of a good starting point for 40R, but you still have to put the official 40R on top of it. But because you've got the basic density, you've got a good start to it.
We haven't had any 40Rs in
In fact,
Talk
we
in a
did,
while.
that's exactly what we did in Danvers. We were trying to do an old industrial area that's attached to their downtown, turn it into a mixed-use district, and we got to the point where everyone was comfortable with 20 units per acre. Well, we've got lots of that around town, we're comfortable with that. Why don't we just make it a 40R, which we did. We made it a 40R, it got approved at town meeting, and they got a $200,000 payment right off the top, and they get $3,000 per unit after that. So it was really something they would have done anyways, but they made it official 40R.
Interesting.
But you still have to go through the process of doing that, yeah. So that's those are so, like I said, there's specific design and dimensional standards for each different building type, based on the type of building, with, again, mixed use being publicly oriented, residential buildings being more privately oriented.
Why do you have that in there?
That's just a modern apartment, or condominium that was just built in Amherst. Now, we can change those images, that's not a problem.
Well, I think this is the, and I'm not even, this is kind of the feel, like over at Plimpton, initially, 4 or 5 years ago.
Mhm.
there's something about living in the burbs and we're not getting all the benefits of a city, so, you know, you're out here, you're getting penalized for being way out here anyway. So do we want city-looking properties? They can be large, but if they have some cornices and if they're a little more
Traditional?
traditional, or they fit in more with you know, you can't plant one of these in Norwood unless it's a commercial building, you know, like Stop and Shop,
Yes.
without going kinda like, you know.
Right. Right.
So I think that's where the fight starts with a lot of, you know, I don't wanna live in the city, and this is city property, so are we leaving that in?
No, we can take it out. I mean,
Would
if you don't
we have a
want-
way of saying you can't, this isn't something
So
that's
these
acceptable?
images are important, the diagram and the images are important because we're trying to give people sort of a perception of
Right.
the scale and general design of what might happen. So I always start out with something that's traditional and modern, and then we tailor it from there.
The picture on the right, I think that's 5 stories.
See,
Look
but-
what they're doing
At
in
least-
Plumpton.
Yeah,
You
those
know,
are
where
5
they're-
stories.
Right,
they're
they've
going
got
the
gable
high-
roofs and,
Well, yeah, but they're going the high end up against the tracks. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then towards the neighborhood, they've scaled it down.
and I'm watching Dedham and doing some stuff in Dedham and like, okay, we got a modern one over here, but we put some, you know, we put some cornices on it, and they've worked that in, can't park anywhere, but that's okay. You know, they've worked that in, that we've got some old, we've got some new, it's still interesting. It's
Right.
not just big giant sided buildings slammed against the street. I think
Well,
that's
I
what
think
we
the-
don't,
I think the shipyard's a good example too, because they've got some traditional stuff and they got some
Where?
more, the shipyard, Hingham Shipyard.
oh, I love Hingham Shipyard.
Yeah, so that's got a couple of good mixed-use buildings that are, not, some are traditional, some are modern. Maybe this isn't a good example, but I think that's something we can do. I can put together a series of images you can look at and say, well, I like that, I don't like that. What I'm trying to do though is basically say, it doesn't necessarily have to be traditional, as long as it blends with what we have in place today.
Right, we can have a Picasso next door, Renoir,
Right,
but, you
right.
know,
It makes it more interesting.
yeah.
It's really about the scale and the
But
placement, you know?
this, you know,
And
all we,
orientation.
all we get is plastic siding and no cornices and,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
No,
and you're like,
that's not gonna happen with this overlay.
okay,
It's gonna be high.
Thank you.
The planning board's a special permit granting authority under this bylaw, which means the board has control over the development, including the architecture.
And the other thing is, you've got design guidelines, which I'm actually revamping right now. They go back to 1998, and they haven't been touched since, so I'm actually modifying them now and sort of updating them. So you'll have those to back you up as well in the special permit process. In fact, if there are things in here you think, this is too much, I know it's 25 pages, but if there are certain things in here you think that we wanna maybe transition over to the design standards, we can do that.
Signage,
Signage.
signage.
Well, I thought you were writing the sign.
I'm not, I'm getting a group together, we're going to,
We're not gonna get into, but
Well, I gave you-
that's,
I
but
think
in
you
design
guys- didn't
standards
you
for,
guys do the signs already?
well,
Signs for you?
it's under, it's a work.
no,
in
it's gone from,
fluid.
it's gone from bad to
It's
worse.
fluid.
Well, I just wrote one for Danvers. I'm happy to give you a draft of that if you want.
Thank you, can you send that over tomorrow
I certainly can, yeah.
to Patrick?
Design standards for the
Would you let me know when you have that?
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
He's gonna send you the sign, Sanders from,
As
Thank
we, if we're gonna go something
It's a
radical
starting
like
point,
this,
yeah.
then I think then design standards should be in there, some design
oh,
standards.
my work is done here.
Yep.
My work is done. Ernie's on it, I'm done.
Yeah, I'll send it. But we
I
are-
believe, Debbie, I believe in everything you say. My issue
Where's
is,
the but?
and my issue on all of this stuff is getting landlords or making this exciting enough that we say Norwood's open for business and have developers come in and not the same landlords that we retread over and over again, but maybe get some new blood that comes in and says, okay, Norwood's really doing okay and I wanna get in there and I wanna do something.
We're open for business and we have standards.
Right,
Well,
but
it's-
we're
That's exactly right. It's-
we're changing the zoning, so our parking regulations, Paul will tell you, people walk in there every day. Our parking regulations, if they go, Paul, what can I do downtown? Well, you gotta have so much parking. Well, I can't do that. Well, you gotta have, the density isn't gonna work. Well, I can't do that. And boom, where do they go? They go to Dedham, they go to Walpole, they go to Danvers, they go to
Right, so it's a
wherever,
trade-off. So
and they
it's-
leave here. Talk to Jack Perry.
And that's what we're trying to do here, is we're creating a trade-off. We're providing.
We want 'em
the-
to come here.
The mixed use, we're allowing residential and mixed-use buildings, we're allowing density at a decent scale. We're allowing you to offset the parking if you can prove that you don't need it.
Right.
But
Before
in
that,
ex-
we
but in
want
ex- But
something.
in exchange, we want good quality development. We want something that's gonna contribute to.
Which will
our
be exciting
walkable
and,
district.
yes.
Right. We wanna provide, condominiums and apartments for the docs and the nurses and everybody else living downtown. wanna
Right, we
we
can't
wanna
give away
reverse
the shop.
commute- Want to reverse commute into Norwood from Boston, all the young techies,
Yeah, I mean, down, we have the theater, we have restaurants.
right? Right,
We
you
just
get
have
the-
it, make it more attractive, okay? We have clear cut it and blacktopped it and let them, I mean, I know that, it's not just about the signs, but we've let the signs go just, it doesn't look nice. So I think we're going in
Signage
that
makes a
direction.
big difference, it makes a huge difference as far as the impression that people have
Right.
of your downtown, no doubt about that. And what you don't have, and I've tried 8 years ago to get you to do it, was projecting signs. You don't have any projecting signs. So you go somewhere like Concord or Wellesley or.
Well, don't
you know,
use Wellesley.
Or Plymouth.
I thought
They got
we
fantastic projecting
didn't
signs.
allow them. We do allow them. We do allow them.
Projecting, you mean,
They come out
They're
this
blade
way.
This way,
signs,
blade
yeah.
signs.
So as
Yes,
you-
we
you-
started
you
that
can
with-
Come out of the parking lot,
Right.
Babels, you look down the street, you say, oh, there's a restaurant, there's a restaurant, there's a
Right.
restaurant, I'm headed down that way.
I don't think we have any, though.
we
No.
started, Steve Costello's site.
I thought we passed a bylaw about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Your predecessor did.
That was
Yeah.
Steve Costello's thing.
Okay.
We allow them, yeah. They just have to be a certain height off the,
They cost more money.
they have to be a certain
Yeah, but
height.
they're so much more effective.
They cost more money. They're not a piece of linoleum with stick-on letters that are, what's that sign? $550, I think the last sign that went up was.
On this here, you have on page 10, you have the townhouse and the row house.
Yep.
We were talking about commercial all along the bottom. Is this apply also, or are we just talking about Washington Street that had all the commercial?
Washington, at ground level, it has to have commercial, because that's really our main commercial
But we
corridor.
did, and when you mention that, that's just Washington.
That's just
at this
Washington
point.
Street. On
Okay.
the other corridors, Broadway and Central, you can do residential development. at ground
And I
level,
think
yeah.
that's a good idea.
I do too,
Yeah.
yeah, I do too, because you don't, if we can keep Washington Street vibrant and healthy with restaurants and shops, that's pretty good for a town this size. But if we can bolster that by having more residential on the back streets and the side streets, I think that's appropriate. I mean, it's really important to maintain that cluster of commercial uses at ground level in Washington, not so much so where it doesn't exist today on Broadway or Central or some of the other side streets.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I mean, we got St. Catherine's Convent, coming up, and if we had some kind of standards there, or, you know what I mean, that's gonna be torn down and rebuilt. Is there anybody on the board, Mr. Chairman, can I just take a quick poll of the board? Is there anybody on the board that disagrees that we should extend the southern boundary to the railroad tracks and include, the side of Broadway that's got Sansones and McDonald's, extend that down?
Joe told me that was east.
Or whatever, I'm looking at it north, south, east.
Are you talking over here, down here?
Yeah,
Go this way?
just extend it to the other side of the street and have the railroad tracks as the boundary on that side. Does anybody disagree with that?
On this map,
Yep.
this is sticking
Yep.
out, here's what he's pointing.
I
I just, I don't have a problem, I'm just kind of wondering why it wasn't included.
Well, because that was the central business district, that was the original line, and I think what he did was follow the central business district.
Yeah, that was.
But,
Right, for that, but should we, in this case, should we be doing what's underneath and putting that into the central business district?
Yeah.
To make it, or,
Either putting it, well, I think it's a valid question of whether or not we should square the district off and bring it all the way to the railroad tracks, and it seems to make sense to
it
me.
makes, it's a natural barrier.
I just wanna know if there's a reason why it was never done that way. You know, it looks like a natural fit to do it that way.
Yeah, I don't know why it
That's
was never
industrial
done.
zoning down there, is that what it is?
Yeah, what
I'm
would the
just wondering if it could've been
manufacturing
I think
zone?
the idea was they wanted
Manufacturing, yeah.
manufacturing down there, but I don't,
Because it was
You know-
manufacturing there and they kept it that way.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
there are
because
still some manufacturing.
they probably
plants
use
in
the,
there.
I'm not sure. if they use
You know,
the
if you're
trailer
gonna,
or what.
if you're gonna change the boundaries of central business, you might wanna think about on the top side, following the property lines rather than cutting
Yeah,
across the
okay.
middle of the.
All right, we can have that discussion, but I just was curious if there's
That's my
anybody who-
discussion.
I mean, what
I'm
should
with you
there-
down here. I'm not with you up here.
I haven't even talked about up there.
I know. You can have down
I
there.
think that,
I'm going up here.
What do they have down here? There's someone who fixes cars down there and.
Well, there's an engineering firm in there, I don't think they do any, they may do some light manufacturing in there,
There's auto repair at the old
Auto
Saint
repair,
yeah.
and there's another one too, I think.
McDonald's there, or is that?
No
further
name.
down?
Oh,
My cars live there.
Yeah, I think McDonald's
They,
maybe.
they can be there
Where's
forever.
the-
Mark.
Oh, the restaurant, you got the plaza, you got
Yeah,
where
Murph's.
Murph's is.
And then you got Mark
so
next
that
door.
means that's
Broadway
the
Liquor
train
and-
tracks.
Yeah.
That's Broadway.
Yeah, that's
So
over here, right?
McDonald's is like
Yeah.
right here, right here.
This,
Well-
I agree. It should, this is all
Why don't
business.
we,
It should be
just
squared off.
for- I didn't mean to open up a can
Yeah.
of worms. Maybe, you know, when Paul or Patrick someday can look at what businesses are there and maybe either could give us reasons why we couldn't do it because of what's there, or if we could do it, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, look into it a little further.
Look into it a little further. There may be a reason why if we did it, you know, now we start making non-conforming uses down here and things like that, which we don't wanna do, so. Why don't we have
Well,
Paul and
we're
Patrick
full
look
of
into it?
pre-existing non-conforming.
Well, yeah, why we add more? So let's move
Okay.
on and we can talk about that later.
And
Right.
this-
So the next
this
section
my-
is the pre-existing non-conforming, but not historic buildings, and that's just saying that you don't have to follow the central business district dimensional standards for lot size and setbacks and all that stuff. You can add more buildings, whether it's, in addition to an existing building or a brand-new building, you can put, second stories on. As long as you're following, if it's a mixed-use building, as long as you're following the standards for that particular building type. So, the central business district dimensional standards don't apply if you're going for a special permit under this project. What we're trying to do is make things, again, more pedestrian oriented, coming towards the street if it's possible, adding in sort of on the sides to allow sort of, fill in the missing gaps between buildings, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And then if you're doing a project that is involving an historic building,
Where you
then
going?
there are additional standards. This is under 9.4.10. It's historic building retrofit. So the external features of the property, these are properties that are, that were built before 1950. We chose that because in looking at the properties downtown, we've seen that most everything we could figure out before 1950 was, really sort of, traditional downtown development. Even a lot of it, some of it was one story because it used to be the streetcar corridor. There's a lot of sort of a linear sort of, space all the way up and down Washington Street, linear sort of development and design. They're still very attractive buildings. So we want to make sure that they're, some of them have been, the facades have been modified, but underneath there's some attractive buildings.
Right, and to go, sorry, but we're not using Wellesley or Hyannis. They left all those buildings. That's high rent stuff they got there.
Yeah.
Wellesley is all those original old 40s buildings.
That's right, and those are, that's again on a streetcar, same with Arlington.
Right, but they
Arlington's
didn't
the
tear
same
'em
thing, it's
down.
Linear, right.
They're all the same damn buildings we have. They didn't tear them down.
So we
They
want
added
them-
on the top, they
Right.
prettied them up, okay?
Good bones.
Yeah,
Good bones.
Good bones, right, and we wanna preserve those bones, so we're basically saying
You mean
you
we
have to.
shouldn't knock them all down?
No, Ernie and Joe, we should not. But they're not ours. I understand they belong to somebody else, but it gives you, why do we go to other towns and go, oh, isn't this interesting? Because it's not all the same stuff.
Yeah,
So leave the same, mix it up. But just because they're not, a 300-year, historic is historic. It just makes it a little more interesting. I understand it's their buildings, we're just,
And sometimes old is just old.
well, can I touch that one?
All right, good.
We're not talking
So
about
we-
people,
we
we're
wanna
talking about
provide an
buildings.
opportunity for the historic properties, but we wanna make sure that, you know, the basic facade, at least the basic facade is intact. You can add up above it, or behind it, or to the side of it, but that's important to us. I think, you know, as a community, that we've got this beautiful corridor, especially down Washington Street. And provide opportunity, but preserve at the same time. No?
He's looking at you, Ernie.
No, hey, it's not, this is a whole thing. I mean, I, you know,
So that section encourages maintaining and restoring any of the historic facades of the building.
so let me just, while we're on that
Has
point, because I
Washington
wanna be
slept in
clear
any
here.
of those buildings?
So if a building was built before 1950, and a developer came in, now, we have some beautiful buildings. We got the Oddfellows Building, we got the Grants Building, we have some beautiful buildings. But we got a couple up there that have seen better days. It probably couldn't support building on top of it,
Yep.
Oh,
okay?
I-beams will support anything, won't they?
But, so, if it was built before 1950, we're not gonna even consider
You could
letting
No,
someone
you could consider.
tearing
because-
it down and
because-
rebuilding something nice and new.
Well, if they can
aesthetically
demonstrate
pleasing
to the
and-
board that structurally you just cannot rebuild it, you can't add on top of it, then, you know, you have some discretion in terms of saying, all right, if you have to take it down, we want you to maintain the facade, you can build up behind the facade, we want you to maintain the facade.
Like they did with the fog.
I mean, I wouldn't,
Yeah.
I wouldn't let them tear it down to put a parking lot in there. I
Right.
mean, no offense to Conrad's, I love it and all of that, but, you know, they took the old Woolworths building down there and Puritan Furniture
Mm-hmm.
and put a parking lot there, and there's a gap. And, you know, and it bugs me you know, I mean, I just don't like the gap. And, you know, I wish, I wouldn't be in favor of that, but if someone came with a proposal, where they had some one-story building that was concrete and said, you know, I'd like to really do this building's not gonna support.
Well, what buildings on Main Street are just concrete?
Well, I'm not gonna, I'll tell you after the meeting, but we're not gonna, but I mean, I just don't want it to be that we're not even gonna entertain that.
No, it's not that, it's basically, if your building structurally can support upper floors without tearing it down, then we wouldn't, if it's historic, we would encourage you to do that. If you
Because
can
they're gonna,
demonstrate, and the biggest issue that comes up with upper floor additions is the seismic requirements under the building code, they're so much higher than they used to be. So a
Well,
lot
plus
of those
getting-
buildings are
getting-
challenged as far as meeting those current
getting
standards.
utilities up there is an issue for a lot of
What's
these.
a seismic requirement?
Well, the earthquake. you know,
Earthquake.
Prevention, you know, all that stuff that goes.
Building
with it.
codes today are, I mean, you have to have hurricane codes, there's all kinds of
Yeah,
codes.
right.
But a lot of
So-
these buildings getting utilities up there, that's an issue with our buildings downtown, is
Yeah.
that they're big. You know, our downtown, that's a big issue with our downtown buildings, is they're huge buildings.
Mhm.
And they, you know, will cost a lot of money for these landlords to break them up. You know, we always say, why can't we put little boutique things in there? It'd be great to have 10 little, you know, mom and pop stores. But you get some of these great big buildings, they can't do it. They don't have the you know, the receiving areas, they don't have, you know, plumbing, they don't have the
Yeah.
electrical to heat all these little, I mean, to do it is astronomical figures. You take a building like, you know, Park Snows, you can't do it. You couldn't put 10 little buildings in there. It'd be great if you
Park
could,
Snows?
but, Klein's, now it's a furniture place. But I mean, it's a huge building, and you know, the True Value store, those are big buildings.
Those aren't huge, I disagree.
All right, well,
They're-
whatever.
They're deep. And
They're
the problem
deep.
They
is
are
They're
deep.
deep.
And so you can't, you create bowling alleys.
Yeah.
And the problem with a lot of these buildings in the downtown is they're so deep that they can't be divided up and used because they would create.
If it was narrow and
Bowling
long,
alley.
then you could do that, but,
Yeah, it's all frontage, yeah.
Yeah.
Width to it, yeah.
but they go way back. Some of them have second.
Yeah, it really
you know.
depends what the original use of the building was, you know, if they're old.
They served its purpose in
They're old
the
industrial buildings,
40s and
wide open, you can
50s,
get
yeah.
the utilities up and down. I think
Yeah.
like Thorns American in Northampton, they've divided those into smaller.
Yep, that's a great,
But I think
It's a
that
great
that was an
building.
old, that was an old industrial building originally, I'm not sure.
yeah, it's a great building.
Yeah.
But they could do the same thing with
Yeah.
Klein's.
I
Klein's is a
think,
great
again,
building.
I think that the prime spot is the bottom.
I did too. I think that's where the most opportunity.
The opportunity is down there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, you've already, Vico's is a very successful restaurant that has moved out of up from uptown, downtown. you know, down to that area, and I think that area is primed.
But I think we
I mean,
need them
We could
both.
put a
I mean.
garage, we could put a parking garage on the municipal thing. There's all kinds of opportunities down
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Is there a way to anticipate if we have enough first floor, commercial space, frontage or what, this red line here, to see if we have enough, you know?
I think when we did the master plan, we added up the amount of square footage of all the buildings at street level. And I can't remember what the vacancy rate was back then, but it was probably 10 or 15, I'm guessing. Maybe the same today. So
Enough what?
Enough, first floor, you know, where you require, you can have the first floor, you know,
This is where we
restaurant or
have it.
whatever, second floor residential, whatever,
This goes all the way
that,
down.
this red line,
Like where the Thai food.
right on
place is.
Washington Street, is there enough of
That's
that? Do we have
Manhattan here.
enough
Here's the St.
business,
Catherine's here.
first floor, but, you know, is there a
I
way to
think
anticipate
it's-
that, I guess?
I can't give you a specific, statistic on it. but I
Right,
think there
right.
is, based on the, just the observations on the street, that there's still some pretty, there's some vacancies here and there,
Right.
and things turn over.
I guess I'm being
and-
optimistic that we
Yeah.
could fill, you know, a little more.
Well, I mean, I think that, you reserve that corridor, cause that's really key, cause that should be your commercial corridor. And then things on the side streets and the parallel streets, those will be a combination of commercial and residential.
Right.
But that's really the real walking district right there.
Okay.
So it's really important to have, commercial, retail, restaurant, commercial, rather than residential, nothing,
I see.
commercial, nothing, You don't want those gaps between the things that engage
Islands.
pedestrians.
Yeah.
And that's
Right,
not
gotta go
unusual,
to the
that's
store
not
and walk
unusual, you see
past
that in a lot of
10
downtowns.
apartments to go
Right.
They'll
to
reserve
the
the
shoe
ground
store to,
floor and their main
you know.
corridors for
Right.
commercial use.
If you build it, people will come.
So I think if you can keep those 4 or 5 blocks vibrant and.
Solid.
Yeah, that's really what we're trying to do. And, whatever happens on the side streets, especially to the south, being a combination of, residential opportunities and some mixed use, then that's great. And that just feeds into the main drag.
The density. So you're saying you could have mixed, you could have,
Yeah,
okay.
Oh,
That-
yeah,
But
for
that,
sure.
that is just a
that's just saying, in that
requirement of
particular corridor, you
Washington
have
Street.
to add, but on the other ones,
Right.
you can have both. You can have residential and commercial.
Awesome, okay.
What do we now down there?
Okay, so allowed uses under part 11, that's basically the current table of uses, so,
Part 11. Sorry.
page 15, that we're just,
Oh, 9, 4,
we're not
11,
changing
allowed
uses,
uses.
we're just changing the building types for this overlay district, so that, whatever's allowed in the district is allowed in the overlay district. It's really a matter of focusing on, good mixed-use buildings and good residential buildings. And then the density, as we mentioned, so for smaller residential buildings like townhouses, that's 12 units per acre, but you can go up to 16 if you're providing some public benefit. 16 units per acre.
Could you just touch briefly on what you found in your analysis of some of the existing mixed-use buildings, of what kind of residential density do we have right now in Olivardi's and the Talbot's building?
Yeah, so,
'Cause it was surprising to see what's already out there.
right, so you've got 354 units in the central business district.
Residential.
Residential right now.
Right. You have.
That includes the 2 and 3, the 2 family, 3 families
Yep,
down
all
on,
that stuff, yeah.
on East.
So is Olivati's actually apartments, or
It
is it, it is?
It's apartment,
14
not-
14 apartments.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's not,
not a flop house.
no, I was gonna use that word.
Well, it used to be.
Donald.
When it was the Village Inn.
Right, but it's not short,
Term rentals,
no, I'm not
Rooming
using the
house.
right word.
It's not a
Rooming
rooming
house, thank
house.
you. It's
Okay.
not a rooming house, it's apartments. Okay, and the one, at the end of Day Street that we let them put the whole stack on top with the insurance agency before you hit Broadway. No, before, right across from the parking lot,
Yeah, it's got 4 units.
next to the roast beef shop. That's got units up top. Remember we did that?
where McDonald's Paints was.
Yes,
Yes, that was about 12, 15 years ago.
yeah,
We-
so that's,
They put up a couple apartments above McDonald's
so
Paints.
that's apartments.
So
Olivati's.
Olivardi's has 14?
Olivar's got 14.
So this is what we are pointing to as an example of what a good mixed-use development can look like. And we do this because it's an attractive building, got a great restaurant on the first floor, and 14 residential up above. And we think this is a good example to lay people's fears to rest, that it's not gonna be too dense or look horrendous
Yeah.
if you look at this, and this is how it could be done.
Right, and unfortunately, and I'll send you the PowerPoint slides tomorrow, but so you can see, we've got a series of maps that show you where the different residential properties are, how many units are in the buildings, and what the density is, what the number of dwelling units are per acre, because I'm talking about 12 per acre for townhouses and 20 per acre for mixed-use buildings and multifamily buildings, but if you look at Olivardi's, that's 14 units, and that's 41 units per acre.
Okay, so you need to translate that, because you say an acre, and I go that
Right.
makes I can't.
Acres about a football field.
That's right.
Okay, but I can't, and I think to sell this, if you're gonna have to sell this at town meeting, you're gonna have to give them, okay,
Right.
Olivati's is this.
41
Well,
units per
people will
acre.
be surprised
People
when
will
they
be
find out
surprised,
that there's
right.
14 units in Olivati.
How many
Right.
units do you have in the Talbot?
35. The density is 86 units per acre, a half acre lot.
So where do they park?
They've got some behind them,
At Talbot's?
some parking behind them, not all the parking is behind them, so they must park,
They're all over the place.
they're probably all over the place, yeah.
And
Post
Olivati's
office.
was grandfathered, correct? Wasn't that the deal with them?
What, the footprint of the building was probably grandfathered, in the number of rooms versus apartments was probably how they got to that. There was probably 14 boarding house rooms, and that's how the Board of Appeals ended up likely approving a change to an existing non-conforming special permit.
Right.
But
Okay.
if I proposed rezoning downtown to allow 81 units per acre, you guys would run me out of town. And I could just point down the end of the block, and that's where it is.
Well, you might not want.
I mean, we ran into a
There.
problem, we ran into a problem a few years ago at town meeting, where I might have been Folsom, was it Folsom? He owned the building downtown with a jewelry store.
Yeah,
And he's got a vacant, used to be all dentists and lawyers' offices
Yeah,
up, it's
yeah.
it's a pretty weird place up there. It's an old wooden, it's kind of like going back in time upstairs there.
Right.
And he wanted to put a couple of apartments in there.
Right.
Well, our density was crazy, and in town meeting, we were, unfortunately, apartments is a dirty word,
Mm-hmm.
and you tell people apartments, and it's, apartments
No,
done right.
apartment buildings, huge apartment
Apartments
buildings.
done right works.
Right.
And, in certain areas, in certain circumstances, and the downtown is, I've been saying it for my whole life, it's where they belong. And people, if you have, businesses will come when there's people, not the other way around.
exactly.
And they will find the people. And our downtown is perfect for it.
Absolutely.
You got 2 train stations within walking distance, you got a bus line, you got a beautiful,
Good
it's
restaurants.
good restaurants,
theater,
you can
got
walk to a
hospital.
supermarket, you got a
Hospital.
hospital,
Right.
you got everything you want. You got
Right.
Dunkin'
All within
Donuts,
walking distance, yeah.
17 places to buy a pizza,
That's right.
14 places to get your
The
nails done,
right.
okay?
That's everything.
But there are 17 places you can get a pizza and go. But it's perfect for that, and that's what killed it at town meeting, on the
perception of
density,
density,
and
perception
they
of
did, the
density.
perception was, we don't
And
want
the
more.
perception, frankly, the perception of people are gonna live there. I mean, basically what's happening in a lot of these downtowns is,
And they're good people.
young
Nothing
people,
wrong
well,
with
young
them.
people, young people are coming and staying in these places because they don't wanna drive. Yeah, they wanna they wanna have good transportation access, the train and all that. They wanna have, good opportunities for, employment, which they do in downtown. Norwood.
In this town, there is a new generation of young people with young kids
Mm-hmm.
that have taken an interest in this town, they love going downtown,
And it's
Go to
not that,
I used to be-
Go to Castle Island Brewery on a Saturday afternoon, they're all down there with their kids. and
oh, don't even start, don't even
But
start.
This is what they do
You open
now.
up a brewery
This is what they
downtown,
do. Oh,
it's-
my
it's,
God,
it'll be a
yeah.
huge,
But
you
there
live
is
in
a
Marshfield.
young group of, these millennials, or whatever you wanna call them, and they don't want cars, and they don't want the big houses with the big
They
yards,
don't.
and they wanna be able to walk to the coffee shop and walk to the train, and they wanna go to listen to a concert on the Common and walk back to their
That's
apartment.
exactly right.
It's,
And I have to defend my townies. Apartments are not a dirty word. Huge apartment complexes where only the landlord is making the dollars is what
Well,
we
I
are
agree.
sick
That's-
of.
That's why you
Okay,
sprinkle
we're-
it throughout.
well,
that.
correct.
That's why-
But to
That's
say
why
we don't like apartments, we don't like apartment dwellers is just unfair and untrue. We're 48% rentals, we're open to, we just said enough with 350 units on a little, that's not what we're looking for.
Right.
I agree with you, Debbie.
I want downtown
Well,
Boston
you
with
want
all
like-
its
well,
amenities
the
if I'm gonna
Folsom
get
Building-
that.
Folsom Building's a good example. There are 10, say in the assessor's records, there's 10 units in there upstairs. And that's, the density there is 57 units per acre.
And he's tried many times to redo that building. I mean,
Which is that, Honeydew Bee?
That's the one across from the Common. It's like right there in the corner.
yeah, he's got a couple.
They got more than that. He's got more than
He's
that.
got, yeah, he's got
More than that.
he's got the one
But
down
it's
by the
okay.
hospital, he's got the one right at where Farnham's Music used to be upstairs there. Dr. Corbett, my dentist, when I was a kid, going down memory lane here.
Talking
So-
over by the tree that got cut down last year. You know that
So I
one.
think,
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think people will be surprised
That
to
was a
see
great tree.
how much,
My tree?
how much residential.
Yeah, his tree.
And then what the density of, these places, like, you know, these buildings that people like and the density of the housing that's in there,
Yeah.
you know?
So the density, you have two different numbers, what are they again? Just
So basically, by special permit is the one on the left, so townhouses would be 12, you can go to 16 if you provide some public benefit. And that could be additional parking, that could be open space, that could be streetscape improvements, so anything that contributes to sort of the public realm, the
And
whole
these
effort.
numbers, when compared to what we were just discussing, are quite low.
Right,
And
right.
reasonable, we should be having those all.
So that it provides, it's designed to provide an incentive to get some public benefits to the public realm, parks,
Right.
landscaping.
Exactly, we wanna,
Nice
we gotta
signs.
find that point where we're providing incentives for them to do this, but to go that extra mile so that they get to that density that they need, or want, and we get some public enhancement back for it. Which again, it's for the purpose of enhancing the whole district.
Right, which brings
So-
them more business,
Right.
better
And
renters.
It's in their own best interest to, improve the parks, improve the parking system, or
Beat
add
that
streetscape
drum to
improvements,
death.
These are all things that, lift the whole district up.
The issue down here probably is that you got a lot of those old houses, they've probably been owned by the same people for years and years. There's probably no mortgages on those houses. They're just cash cows and
Yeah.
they have no incentive to not, to jump into something like this, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but that's okay. I
that's-
mean, you're giving them the opportunity. Not,
Yeah.
not everyone's gonna take it, that's for sure. So. Okay, there is an affordability requirement, at least to start out with. And we have basically two different types. So there are ownership units. The minimum affordable requirement for affordable units is 15%. And if it's rental, if it's rental, then it's 20% of the overall number that you're producing, which is pretty standard. That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to just comment on this. We've reached that 1.5% of our land area that's utilized for affordable housing in Norwood. However, some of the affordable developments have deed restrictions that were 30 years when they were set up, but they're gonna time out in 3 years, 5 years. And we have 3 or 4 of these. If the deed restrictions time out, they're no longer affordable, the land area of that development falls off that 1.5 calculation, and the town will once again be vulnerable to additional 40B developments. So in an effort to proactively try to prevent that, we've included an affordable housing requirement that says that 15% of the units need to be affordable. And so it's important that everybody understand that we're trying to prevent a reoccurrence of the situation the town was in a few years ago.
And that makes sense, and we also need to keep adding to the green space component, correct?
I don't know how that's connected to this.
Well, I mean, the more, because those three drop off, you go below your 1.5
Yeah.
landscape,
Yeah.
okay? Because getting to 10%, you know, 2 units, that number jogs all the time. I agree that making some of it affordable, is that negotiable? So let's say we get a developer that says, I don't wanna do 15% affordable, I wanna do 10. Can we give them a waiver for that? Or I don't wanna do, can we?
Right now, we don't have anything in there. The outlet that some communities have, and so right now, we're talking about what we call inclusionary zoning. And many communities in their inclusionary zoning bylaws that require affordable housing allow the developer to write a check to buy out the creation of the affordable units. And theoretically, those funds go into an affordable housing trust fund. And at some point in the future, if you ever get enough money to actually go and build some affordable units, you can do it. The trouble is, it takes a lot of money going into an affordable housing trust account to be able to actually use that money to create some more affordable units. So it's kind of a policy question of whether or not we want to have that in here, and it doesn't really work out very well.
All right, well, what if that's,
Ted, is this in towns that you deal with, is this the norm now, or is this an outlier, putting this into?
No, I'd say most every town is requiring some degree of affordability.
I mean, that's really the way, I mean, the state,
And
that
ours is,
they're,
yeah,
you know, they're
ours is a
all,
little different, we're saying if it's 8 units or above, so those smaller projects, we don't wanna put that on.
well, obviously, yeah.
But the bigger one, 8 or more.
You'd
you know,
want one in there
and-
for
and
that,
we're
or,
trying to incentivize ownership units as well
Right.
as, you know, rental units. so-
On this, on the first one, ownership units, it says, in writing,
Yeah, I know,
20%,
that's a
but then it says
mistake.
15%,
It's-
then the second one says 25%,
Yeah,
and
I
then
missed
20%.
that. It's a-
So which
Yeah.
one is it?
It's 15% for ownership, and it's 20% for rental.
So
And
do we
and
flip
would they include the whole area for our purposes of adding to the 1.5, or,
Well, that's,
would that whole thing go, or just,
it has to qualify for your subsidized housing inventory. So,
Yes.
yeah,
So
so
we
that's
want it
a
to do
requirement,
that,
yeah.
So I think Joe's question is the total lot area then counted toward the 1.5
I
scenario?
believe that's how it works. yeah.
yes, it is.
I think it is.
And the units
I just
count
wanna
as
make
well.
sure that,
But these are
I just
small
wanna make
lots.
sure,
Right.
yeah, I know they are.
So if
And
you have
I think the
40
ones we're gonna lose are fairly small lots coming
Oh,
up,
yeah.
the ones that are not in perpetuity. But I just wanna make sure it certainly
Yeah,
is,
that could-
that 15% would get you the whole lot,
As long as
and
it's,
20% would get you the whole lot.
yeah,
Yeah, so if you have 40 units and 5 are affordable, you get the whole 40.
Right.
Towards
Right,
you
that's
get the
right.
whole 40 towards your count, plus you get the land, if it's a,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
if it's a 20,000 square foot lot, you get the land as well towards the 1.5.
Right,
So you win on both ends, you know, for whatever it is, it's worth.
yeah. Yeah. So the Talbot block does like penthouses up on top, and they're all affordable. And we can like get the whole.
There's all kinds of different apartments in there, there's some rooms,
There's
there's
a
some,
lot, yeah, a lot of different things.
yeah, a lot of things going on.
Ernie, you're on
Okay.
TV.
Oh, it's all kinds of different things
I've
in
never,
there.
I'd
There's-
be
there's-
fascinated to see it.
Okay, so the parking standards, we went over those a little bit before, basically you follow the current standards, although you're given the opportunity to reduce the amount of parking that you're required to have, if you can demonstrate to the planning board that you really don't need that much, and there are limits on that as well. So for a townhouse, you can go down with, you know, with permission from the planning board to 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit for 2 bedrooms or less. And then it's 2 dwelling units per 3 bedrooms or more. You're not likely to get a lot of 3 bedrooms downtown, but it's there anyways. And then if it's a mixed-use building, and if the 1 bedroom, you can maybe go down to 1 space, If it's 2-bedroom, mixed-use building, it's 1.5, and then 3 or more is 2 spaces again, so.
That's always gonna be an issue in downtowns.
Yeah.
I mean, just the land.
Yeah, and then the other thing you can do is you can reduce the on-site parking by, again, it's gotta be the planning board that approves this. You can count the public spaces that are in front of your building, if you're on the street, there's on-street parking, reduce it by that much. You've got a car sharing program, which is becoming more popular, especially with the younger folks.
How do they prove that they're gonna share a car?
Huh?
You gotta put that in their deed or something? This is you got a car share, you put it in their deed?
If you allocate so much space of your lot to a car share program, it doesn't have to be necessarily just the residents, it could be other residents in the downtown area or anybody. If there's a zip car, 10 spaces allocated to Zipcar, then everybody that in the downtown area could use it.
That would be very interesting
Yeah.
to have that right there, so close to.
Some towns actually are starting to get them.
Is that a Zipcar still a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's still popular?
Sure.
Oh
We
my
don't
God.
see them as much anymore, because when Uber came on, it seemed like Zipcar kinda went away a little bit, but not really, huh?
No, people still use them.
People
Yeah,
still
and
use them.
they seem to be a little more in the burbs.
Yeah, they're coming out to the borough.
Yeah.
Yeah, before they
Now
were
you
just
can
down,
rent a
mostly
scooter.
downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're,
We did that.
Indianapolis,
Those
they're
things
all over the
those things
place.
are fast.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
dangerous.
They're all over the
My
place.
kids ride them flying up and down.
is stacked parking tandem parking?
Stack parking is like valet parking, okay, so you can have, if you got a restaurant and you don't have enough space on site to meet the parking requirements, and if you can work out a deal with somebody around the area, to have satellite parking that's valet parking, then you can set up a valet booth in front of your restaurant.
So stacked and valet is the same thing?
Yes, tandem is basically back to back.
Right, I thought stacking
Front to
meant,
back, yeah.
stack, we're not,
Stacking is more.
like in New York City with the little
Stacking
elevators,
is
I
more
love
like
those.
a parking manager that's moving the cars. around.
Okay, stacked means somebody's
Tandem
moving in
means
and
if
out.
you're, this is happening a lot too.
You're blocking the guy behind you.
Right, the owner of a unit, they have 2 car
Oh.
spaces and they share
Here you go,
spaces.
sorry, got it,
Yeah.
you got it right there.
I think you were talking about rack, not stack. When
I love
you can
those
drive
racks,
up
yeah.
on a lift and.
I love
rack.
those.
No, stacked is basically for like valet parking.
It's like being in the 40s all over again, right over here to my left.
But tandem is a pretty good thing because it really reduces the footprint of the parking space, the parking lot. So if you're on, smaller, parcels like we have in downtown, tandem for residential uses really works well.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing going, that, us as a board would look at it, but that we're a lot more flexible on parking. That's always, density and parking are the two,
Yeah.
always been the things that held this thing back.
Okay, who wants to touch that third rail? Because one of the things was on Cottage Street where they wanted to do underground.
That's fine.
It is?
Yeah, it's allowed, yeah. Structured parking's allowed.
That's what we weren't allowing him at the spa there, the spa behind Common Cafe, remember?
So
That-
turn to page
On the
21.
page, yeah.
Yeah, I'm on 21.
Below the diagram is structured parking.
So you can do it, it has to be, if it's above ground, it's gotta be, designed so that it fits into the other facades up and down the street. But yeah,
Or underground.
you can do underground parking, yeah. Is that a problem? You don't wanna do that?
No,
In
no,
the past-
maybe for the rats, but it doesn't bother me.
It's my understanding that in the past that parking garages were very controversial. And the current parking regulations do not allow for structured parking like that. So
Mhm.
this would be an area that there would be an exception. And the last zoning bylaw amendment that was approved for the Forbes Hill area also does allow for parking garages. So we are beginning to integrate structured parking into our parking regulations within certain districts of the town.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, my perfect example of a nice parking setup is the corner of Walnut Street, those apartments down by the car wash there. And the corner of
Oh.
Walnut and Washington, they come in from the back and they pull in from the streetscape. You would
Yes.
never know there's
Yeah,
parking.
that's right.
But because it looks like there's, you
Yeah, it
walk
looks
up.
just like a lower
It
floor.
looks just like a lower floor, but
They
actually
could have
the
given us
apartments
a
are above.
little bit of a step back on that, Could have given us a little green on that, just a little.
Well, I think parking structures have come a long way too. I mean, they're so much better designed now.
Oh,
than they were
yeah.
20
We're not
years
talking
ago.
a
I mean,
concrete-
Things like, you know, like the enclosed staircases.
Yeah.
Today, you don't see those. Those are wide open, so that you're
Yeah.
not nervous going in and out of them. There's more space between the floors so that people are comfortable. They work really well for residential buildings.
The facades are better, they
They're
brick,
directly
they're brick,
connected, and
they're
there's a
stone.
security system. They
Yeah.
work well in downtowns if they're, like in Northampton, where it's right behind Orange Market, it's just a beehive of activity.
We
If you
love
don't-
Northampton.
if you
Yeah.
don't- Well, I'm just saying, there's a bunch of good examples, you know?
Yeah,
But if you don't have that activity. then
go to
they- then
Florence
they don't-
Diner the next town over.
That's right. I'm working in Florence. Yeah. But if you don't have that activity, then they're not, the perception is they're not safe. But,
One of 10 partners
perception
on
is
this
reality.
project has an office in Florence.
right. And we're actually working in Northampton. Yeah. Florence is a great little village. You know.
Yeah, it is.
That's where John is from, right behind Miss Flo's Diner. Mother lived there for 90
They-
years.
They turned that old industrial building in the corner into a microbrewery.
That's great, isn't it?
It's great stuff. Yeah. Great stuff.
There's one of them popping up in everybody's
Absolutely.
garage, man.
That's right. I want to go back to the diagram for a second because, as I mentioned before, on page 21, parking is required on the side and to the rear of the buildings with a pedestrian connection to the sidewalk. There's one exception to that, and that is that basically, if you set back the building and you work out an agreement with the town, you can have parking on the street, which is privately owned but serves like public on-street parking. And the idea there is to try to create, you know, a usable, you know, easy in, easy out sort of parking area, like on some of our side streets, like Broadway might be a good example someday, that South Side could be redeveloped and there'd be on-street parking.
Yeah, 6
I'm
months
lost.
a year.
I'm
Yeah,
lost.
so basically, the right-of-ways on Central and Broadway are not real wide. So
Correct.
it'd be hard to get, you know, on-street parking there.
Right,
But if the developers on either one of those streets says, well, we'd like to put parking in front of the building, we're gonna push back the building, we're gonna add a row of on-street parking, even though it's not in the right-of-way. And we're gonna
Okay.
add the sidewalk and the streetscape behind that. The town will agree with that, then you've basically got private parking that serves as public on-street parking.
okay,
Which benefits everybody.
all right,
And this is what's happened, we actually did this, we set this up in Linden, on Linden Street in Wellesley. All that parking on the south side of the street is private parking, but it serves like public parking. And the right of way there is only 40 feet, they didn't have the space to put on-street parking, but
So they cut back.
so they stepped back the building and they worked out a deal that will give you less, you don't have to have as much space on site, but we wanna create this lane on the street.
so
And it
who,
works out great, because those spaces are always used.
they're always used, and
So-
who paid for
That's-
that? The
The
developer?
did.
Developer, because he wouldn't wanted parking.
Okay.
Because he didn't have to put much on, he had plenty of space on his site, he didn't need that.
He
So-
wanted building on his site, not
But he
parking.
he wanted to have the convenient spaces in front of the store.
It's
Okay,
really just changing the orientation and location of the parking. Instead of having a parking lot in front of your building, you have a row of parking in
Along
front
the
of your
street,
building
and
on
it
your
looks like it's
property.
part of the street.
but he's
Right.
gotta move the sidewalk
Yeah. They have
and the
to build a
trees,
site- yeah, they
he's
have to-
gotta pay for that. We don't have to pay for that.
All private
All
properties.
part-
Okay, all right,
And
One
that
thing with
counts,
the
that
on-
counts as open space, so I mean, we're getting basically what's functioning on-street public parking, and he's creating the sidewalk and the street trees.
okay.
And there's a public benefit because the public can park in those spaces.
Right.
He can't mark them off as his own spots.
No,
Some they might be able to, but,
well, I wouldn't let him do it here.
okay.
One thing with on-street parking, counting it, probably discussion for another day, with on-street parking, counting it towards your parking is, 5 months out of the year, no parking. No street parking.
Well-
Now, find another place to park.
Yeah, but the reality is, if you get a
Oh, my
50-foot
God.
building, you're talking about, 2 or 3 spaces.
But does that apply downtown?
It applies under this bylaw.
The 5 months out of the year, we can't park on, there's no on-street parking in Norwood.
I think.
But it doesn't apply downtown, does it?
It does on these back streets, sure, it does.
In the overlay district, it would
Overnight.
apply?
It's not about overnight.
Overnight.
Overnight parking.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about residential, what are you gonna do?
They do it now.
No, but if we put more density in the overlay district of downtown.
I'm sure
and-
Well,
that, I'm
these-
sure
These are probably.
Mr. Ryan is not gonna change the snow plowing, requirements of the
They're
town.
worried about the on-street parking pretty much.
This
Trying to-
is-
trying to get this-
Well, but
The
yeah, that-
parking in this example here is though, these are commercial in front of here.
Oh, yeah.
And they would be used
Yeah.
because they're commercial, so at night.
but there
not
might be
overnight, and they're
residential
not gonna
above
be
it.
op- they're- Yeah, but they're not gonna be open all night, that's why they have the parking behind.
I don't think that overnight's allowed on the street anyways, is it?
Well, yeah, it is,
really? Yeah, okay,
yeah, just during the winter you can't because of snow plowing.
okay.
So in this instance, this would be used during the day anyways, naturally.
Right.
The businesses would be closed down and people wouldn't necessarily be here.
One of the things that towns are doing when they allow mixed use in their downtowns is putting together a residential permitting program, so the residents that are living downtown can park on public parking lots at night. And that makes a different. So, I mean, all this.
Oh, public parking lots, okay, so they get a
so
sticker,
they
kinda
get a-
like
they get
in
a
a,
sticker, yeah, they get a
Okay.
permit to park in this lot or that lot.
right. And that's the town charges for that, you get a
Yeah.
permit.
It's a good way of sort of managing, again, managing the parking, I mean,
Yeah.
and you're getting better use of your public resource.
Are you, Paul, planning on, is this something that we're looking at May town meeting?
Yes.
So we got a lot of work to do on this.
Yeah, and when Ted wraps up, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So I'm just about done. We talked about the last piece is open space, and again, you know, rather than having a generic requirement of 20% on your lot, we've got specific types of open spaces. Everything from a neighborhood park, if it's a huge project, to, you know, small terraces, outdoor dining terraces, and community gardens, rooftop gardens, that sort of stuff. So again, we wanna make sure that it's quality space, and if it's a commercial building and you're doing something at the street, it's something that, you know, is attractive to pedestrians, and that sort of thing. So there's a, for every building type, there's a percentage open space, and you get a variety of things you can choose from.
I mean, ideally would be for new development, like, again, I keep going back to that lower part, but, you know, treescape, landscaping and new street lighting and, you know, carrying over the same type of street lighting we have uptown throughout the entire district.
Yeah,
You know, bricks, I mean, carry over what you've done on Washington Street.
Yeah.
You know, the brick
Washington
side, the
Street's
brick
great, yeah.
crosswalks,
Yeah.
they're not real brick, but the look, carry those down to, continue that whole look so it's a village. It's not, well, you got the one street and then the rest of it.
It's a district.
It's a district,
Right.
this street is the same as this street, you
Right.
know what I mean, as far as and I know it's a big thing, and it's gonna take a lot of development, a lot of landlords, and it's not gonna be done, something you're not gonna do in a week.
Right.
But,
I think having a
the
plan-
end game is to
Yeah.
have this plan, that it's all beautiful and it all fits together, and
I think there actually was a plan at some point for Central. I think
There was
I think they were
years and
supposed
years
to,
ago.
Washington was phase one of that streetscape project. Central was phase two, and it never got done, but I think
Well,
they
they
had-
wanted to work, it was eventually, there was one plan, there was many plans over the years.
Yeah, yeah.
One was to do Washington Street and then continue it into the ward,
Yeah,
and then from the ward, continue it down to South Norwood,
Yeah.
and one main flow. So you never knew where you were, if you were uptown or South Norwood, you didn't know where you were.
If this goes through, it might be a good idea to do some basic plan for streetscapes so that you can negotiate with developers down the road, say, this is what we envision for this section of Broadway or Central Street, and you've got a parking management plan, so this is what we wanna do with our,
Would we put that right in here?
property. That'd be a sort of a side, plan, like you have the design guidelines, this would be sort of a downtown, streetscape plan or a public improvement plan or something.
Because in my opinion, we're just way too ambiguous, with our landscaping, here's what,
What you'd wanna do is you wanna have a pretty good sort of detailed, series of, recommendations for parking management, what we wanna do as far as everything from wayfinding to future facilities to what we can do with our existing parking facilities. And then as
what's
far as-
wayfinding?
Wayfinding is like getting people to your public parking lots,
Okay.
signage directs people.
Signage coordinated.
Wayfinding,
Yeah,
okay, it's not an
wayfinding.
app?
This way to the hospital
Okay.
and public parking.
There's a sign that I can
Small
actually
town
read?
hall.
Okay, good, I'm
Kind of
good.
babble over this one. And then what you'd wanna do is at least have like a model block on Central Street and Broadway that says, you know, this is what we anticipate the street design to look like. And this, if you can do this for us, and put the on-street parking for us, that'll satisfy your open space requirement.
But we're not gonna have minimums.
Minimum what?
It's, you know, you're developing 8,000 square feet footprint, and you've gotta have X amount of green space because you're redeveloping that. Are we gonna do that? No?
Yeah, there's a percentage for each building type.
There was?
Yeah.
And hopefully it would be on the street versus a backyard.
I like the one tree for every 350 square feet.
Well, there's basic design standards for these different types of open space, but the building types have a percentage. Okay, so, like if you're doing a multifamily building, it's 20% outdoor amenity space. Again, that could be a little front yard.
Where are you?
Courtyard. I'm looking on page 9.
12, yeah.
It could be just a.
Oh,
an
you
ex-
went way,
standard
I'm way over here.
Sidewalk with brick and flower
right.
pots
If
and
it's a
benches
commercial
or
or
something.
mixed-use
Yeah.
building, yeah, outdoor seating.
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
just for,
Yeah.
you know.
So just,
Okay.
it's
Doesn't have to be
adding
grass,
to
it has
the,
to be
it's
wood.
adding to the,
Thank you.
the attractiveness.
You went back
of
on
the-
me.
Yeah.
Yes, and again, attractiveness is a relative term. So if we can be more definitive with, this is how much, which I like,
But
I
that's
mean,
what we are. mean,
I
we're
know,
being very
it's great.
definitive of the open
It's
space.
great.
See, when you're not definitive like we are today with the central business district. with
We get what we
20%
got.
20% open space, that's the little, patch of grass next to the dumpster. We don't want that.
Thank you, Paul. Okay,
So that's where we are. Unfortunately, I didn't have the PowerPoint, so what I can do is I can send that to you tomorrow, so you can look at, this is sort of a synopsis of what we've covered tonight, but also included in the PowerPoint are example, or conceptual examples of what might happen along Washington in terms of adding second floors to some of these one-story buildings, and then on Central and Broadway in terms of what could happen as far as new development and mixed-use development. So we've got some good sort of conceptual ideas on how that might take place.
See, look at Lennox Street, look at the amount of new people you're gonna have down on Lennox Street in the next year. You're gonna have 250, they got between Plimpton and Regal, the amount of new young people that are gonna move in down there, and they're gonna walk
Yeah.
uptown and.
what are you, senior shaming here? They gotta be young?
No, but and I'm thinking they're more the type that are gonna go, maybe it's seniors that are getting out, but they're what people that are gonna wanna walk to the train station, I
It's
mean,
funny,
that's.
'cause- But there are seniors. I mean, I'm working with Situate, and they've done a series of.
Why is he pointing at me?
They've done a series of mixed-use buildings on their main street there. And a lot of people are actually downsizing out of the four-bedroom house and living in this great little condo. You got all the shops and restaurants, you got the harbor right behind you. They
Right.
love it. It's great. Yeah. So
No
it's-
bedrooms, nobody can come visit you, it's great.
The Wharf Restaurant.
So it's a little of both.
I know every bar in every town, that's my problem. Mill Wharf, it's a great place.
It is a great place.
But we still are negotiating.
Negotiating what?
Well, this is the first time we're talking about
Okay.
this, so yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, this is our first discussion.
okay.
And it sounds like a good time to kind of now focus forward on what we're gonna be doing between now and May. Pat and I have had some discussions about a strategy, and, because we have to get a 2/3 vote at town meeting, we can't just assume that a complicated set of new regulations is something that everyone will embrace. And so what we need to do is to do what we just did and educate people about this particular bylaw. And to do that, we're gonna come up with a schedule with Ted. I've already today asked the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to throw out some dates of selectmen's meetings when we could bring Ted in, invite the Board of Appeals, Planning Board, the way we did in the fall. And hopefully we'll have the PowerPoint running for that meeting, and we'll run through the presentation and answer questions. The stakeholders are the property owners downtown. And we know some of those property owners, and we're gonna contact them, and we're gonna send them a copy of the bylaw. We're gonna ask for their feedback, and ask for, if they agree with what this would do, how this would affect their property and increase the value of their property, we will ask them to come to the public hearing when we hold a hearing on this. And if a lot of people show up to support the bylaw amendment, that will help in the process going forward. The third group of stakeholders, and perhaps the most important, are the town meeting members. And we will have another public meeting in the evening. We'll do it at the police and fire station or at the Civic where we have a little more room. We'll let all the town meeting members know, on this night, we're having this meeting, our consultant's gonna explain the bylaw, Ted will answer questions, and I'd like to do that within a month of the date of town meeting, so that it's gonna be fresh in everybody's mind, and they can ask their questions, we can get the issues out, the concerns out on the table and discuss those before we get to town meeting 3 weeks later. And so that's, roughly our game plan going forward. We know the Board of Appeals has been asking for something like this. And we also know that there's also an interest in going beyond the central business district with this concept. When we met with the Board of Selectmen, we had some questions about, well, how far is this gonna extend? And my answer was, right now, we're focusing on the downtown, on the central business district, and this is about economic development. If some of the older housing stock on the other side of Washington Street, where there are 2 and 3 family homes, if this bylaw facilitates redevelopment of some of those buildings, the value of that real estate's gonna go up, and that will increase the town's tax revenue. It will also bring more people to the downtown that live there that are gonna wanna take a walk and shop and patronize our downtown businesses. And so in that respect, it's also economic development. So this bylaw is good for the town, we believe, and for the town's tax revenue generation. And it's hopefully will be good for our businesses that are here. It might also take some more marginal businesses, and it will increase the value of some of the storefronts that are there right now. And we might see some marginal businesses leave and some better businesses move in. And so these are some of the domino effects that we hope over a period of time could take place. If it's successful here in the central business district, then we should have a conversation about bringing it down to the ward, down to South Norwood, and expand the corridor with which we could allow this type of overlay district.
Great presentation, all great ideas, I agree. The reason I was opposed to this before, and what I am incredibly sensitive to, is this side, this residential neighborhood up here, because we need both, okay? They don't pay as much tax as a commercial. All of that being said, this is what I'm gonna place my flag in the ground on. This is a residential neighborhood that's got charm and kids and old people and dogs, and this, if this bleeds into that neighborhood, that's my issue. That was my issue last time. I think downtown, smaller residential, all great ideas. This is where I'm planting my flag. If we can do both, and I think we can. I really do think we can.
I mean, obviously it benefits the neighborhood to have a more vibrant downtown. It's that transition area that we're talking about.
The transition area, right, bleeds and bleeds and bleeds.
Right.
And if there was more happening in the downtown, it would increase the value of the adjacent residential homes where people would, I want to live within walking distance of the
Correct,
village.
but if there's a parking lot, like the phone store on, where's the AT&T thing on?
Yeah. I know what you're talking
Okay.
about, yeah. Well, that was identified as an opportunity for redevelopment, yeah.
And that kind of hurt that neighborhood a little bit. We've got, and then there's a parking lot next to the next door, and that makes that property next to it, that's just a blacktop parking lot, less,
But that may be a great place for townhouses, really nice townhouses.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's a good transition, right?
it is, but I don't want this to bleed into that neighborhood where this building is worth more torn down and made a parking lot to sustain these parkings here in town, because now the day house is right next to a parking lot because that two-family is more valuable as a parking lot.
And that's why everything here is by special permit, so that, you have the opportunity to talk about that and how the impacts of this.
Well, This is the line
But those
over there, right?
transitional areas, we're really hoping those will be sort of, townhouse and sort of, replacing some of those old, commercial buildings that really don't belong up there.
Right, but all of those
Because that's
houses
the
back
market.
there
The
are,
market is really for residential, so.
well, I don't wanna lose those residential to get some other residential. But that's a cause for another day.
So we covered a lot tonight. If you have, if you have something that you think is not clearly written, if you found a typo, if you have a question or a comment, what I'd like to do is to give the board like a week or 2 weeks and set a deadline and say, give me any feedback you have before, what's the 7th?
The 28th is the next,
When do we meet, the 28th?
28th.
I'd like to even do that sooner, so if we gave us 10 days and said like the 18th,
You want us to get it to you by the 18th?
yeah, to submit
Okay.
any comments or questions or typos or corrections. Joe has actually gone through the bylaw, and he and I compared notes, and we had highlighted some of the same things, and I'm gonna provide that feedback to
Okay,
Ted.
okay.
He'll do a revision,
Yep.
and that's the one that we'll put out on the street and start to continue the discussion on.
I just have one question on the heights. If we're talking about 4 stories, or maybe it's only 3, but you were saying that usually the first floor is 12 and then everything else is 10. Does it ever get smaller than that? Because we're talking about 40 feet basically is the height that we've been talking about. Or would they all be going over by 2 feet?
Well, we set an overall height limit. They have to stay under that. So if it's 40 feet, they wanted a 4-story building, they have to figure out how to make that work.
And it wouldn't be too odd to.
Well, they could
to
come
fit
and
that
say,
in.
I need to go to
I need-
42,
I need to go-
and then it's up to us to say, but if they say I need to go to 52, then you say, it's a
Yeah.
different.
But it wouldn't be an odd thing to have a 40-foot building with
I think
4
the
stories.
Oddfellows building is pretty tall. That's the one that's got the bamboo Chinese restaurant in it. That's it, and he's
Yeah, I
got
know where it is.
apartments
I'm trying to
above it,
think.
right on the corner of
theater?
Vernon and.
Mint.
The Mint, no, it used to be, no, it's bamboo now.
And I used to be Sally, but now it's,
No, it's bamboo, it used to be the,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about,
yeah, it's bamboo now, it used to be the.
but was that building built to that height?
Used to be Hanlon Shoes, okay, so it's.
Was that building built to that height?
I think it was always that
We should
height.
try to find out what the actual height is in some of these buildings.
Yeah, and
That's
my
pretty
gut's
tall.
telling me is that we don't wanna allow anything taller than the highest building downtown right now.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
politically and in terms of scale, it would be best to kind of stick with that, and everybody knows that, and I think they
What do
would
you-
understand that.
The highest mixed-use building is the Talbot, probably, or something.
Talbot and the Oddfellows is pretty tall.
Talbot, yeah, so we should figure out what those
Alright.
are, and that sort of be the barometer. I
Pat
think.
and I
And I
will-
need
Yeah,
to
because
fix-
otherwise it'll look like a
and I need
pumpkin
to
with
fix
broken teeth.
That diagram, because I had 60 feet on that diagram,
So we wanna go, we'll check the heights of the tallest buildings we can find there, and then we'll get back to you with that.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And it's good for people to know that.
Does that sound like a good
Yep.
game
Yes.
plan moving forward?
The other thing that I have is, I'm putting together case studies of actual development projects in downtown similar in size that are, pretty well done, and different densities and that sort of thing, but again, just showing like that they're out there, there's lots of them out there. And there's a variety of, new ones that are sort of infill developments or redevelopments. There's a few examples of upper stories put on historic buildings. There's one example that I've been able to track down that has just the facade of the old historic facade and the building behind it. But there's sort of a good sort of sampling of.
With pictures?
Yeah, with pictures and statistics.
And you're not just using Wellesley and the Swells towns?
No, not just the Swells towns. There's lots of,
We
regular
could
towns in
have
there.
some more of us just regular guys, towns.
There's some
yeah.
regular towns in there, yeah.
Well, because that's the argument you get,
Well, I
well, they
know.
did this and over, well, we're not, okay, we're not. We're kinda Dedham without precinct 1,
Yeah.
kinda, right?
Right.
So,
So, yeah, so there's lots of average town examples in there.
yes,
Not
that
that
would
you're
be
an
nice.
average town.
Average is good. I'm okay with
I
average.
think Washington
You
Street
townies
could
okay
do
with
any-
average?
Anybody, I think it's a great corridor, it's a beautiful street.
It is, just needs a little help.
No, you're right. It's
Need
got the
somebody
open
to get-
spaces and sort of, you create nice acres on both sides. It's
Beautiful.
got
It's
good variety
ripe.
of architecture.
It's
and-
ripe,
Yeah.
It covers it either way.
except for a couple of buildings uptown.
A few buildings here and there.
Put the
But everybody,
dynamite.
every town's got a few
That's
of those
right.
buildings, right?
Thanks, Ted.
Great, thank you all.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Ted.
Yeah.
26th and the 29th to come upstairs, is it, that makes sense?
Yeah.
When are you meeting again?
The 28th.
28th.
So do you want, is the 29th of January too late for Ted to come?
No, I think that would fit in,
Come here one more time and then we'll vote something.
and invite the Board of Appeals
Yeah.
and have Ted run through a
Yeah, so
presentation.
you'll be here 2 nights in a row, if that's okay with you?
That's fine, yeah.
No, he's not on the agenda of the 28th, so that, if you're available.
So what, the 29th?
Yeah.
29th of Board of Selectmen, Tuesday.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I'll double check when I get. That's okay.
Let's get it on there anyway.
That would be upstairs? Okay. And we got a projector upstairs?
With a plug?
TV people will take care of it.
Yeah.
Do you want us there on the 29th too?
Yeah, I think having a joint meeting, since you've already had the presentation, it's somewhat optional, but I think to invite the Board of Appeals members and the planning board, meet with the selectmen and continue this discussion.
Yeah, they have a much fancier room than we do.
Oh, I like that.
That's great.
You'll do less talking.
You know me, I like fancy.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
That's a certainty.
Ooh.
How do you make that happen?
Holds the gavel. He's on this side of the desk. I have to sit over there and beg.
Well, this was a work session, and this was, I think it was good where we got questions answered. and-
Yeah, it's good.
Because I did read this, but some of it, it's kind of like you're gonna ask everybody at town meeting to read this too, and it's gonna be, we're gonna glaze over. I have the advantage of being able to call you, but it's like,
Oh, I do have one question, I didn't see it in there on the apartments. Is there a restriction, are there no, did we say that no 3 bedrooms, or are 3 bedrooms allowed?
We
3 bedroom?
didn't specify.
We
no
did not
further.
specify.
No.
And you don't think that's, nobody's gonna put 3, nobody's gonna put kids downtown.
All the projects that I've seen, development projects I've seen, most, I mean.
3
go-
bedrooms don't
there's
pay on a downtown
You know,
thing
the,
like
the
this.
one exception
Too much
was,
room, they can
was
get-
in New Canaan, Connecticut. And, and they were big apartments and they're, basically people were downsizing out of their mansions.
Yeah,
And they wanted enough space for the kids to come and visit for their
Yeah.
holidays, and so they would actually buy 2 in a row.
I mean, a lot of places,
he's
a lot of
talking,
times 3
he's talking little
bedrooms,
kids, you're talking
That-
grown-up
that's
kids.
fancy.
a lot of
No,
places,
but-
3
but-
bedrooms don't
but
pay,
in typical,
because
you
it
know,
takes up a lot of space.
Small moderate sized towns, they're 1 and 2.
Well, actually, someone, if they did that, they may have a home office in there or something. and
They could
if
rent
they're
it
right
out
down
And
to-
if you look at all the 40 Rs,
Airbnb.
if you look at all the 40 Rs that have been done around, I looked at those too, and I can actually share those stats with you. I think it's like 98% of the units are 1 and 2 bedrooms, with very few 3 bedrooms.
First
And-
one in the state, Norwood, we did the first one.
Yeah.
First 40, yeah,
Where
Did
is
you
that?
really, yeah?
yes, we did. St. Peter's Church, South Norwood.
Huh.
They took the old Catholic church down South Norwood that closed.
I thought it was a
and
great
Is that a
church.
40 R?
That was a 40
I
hour.
didn't know that. That's a
First
great-
one in the state.
Yeah.
We were the guinea pig for the state.
How many units are in
Good
there?
job, too.
6, 5 units?
That's a great
He
project.
got caught in the recession.
Did he? Yeah.
He
Yeah.
hadn't sold, he was probably halfway through, maybe not even halfway through, when he got caught.
Really, that's too
But
bad.
now
sold
he's
through.
sold
They
out,
eventually
now he's
sold
sold
Did they?
out. And then St. George Church, same thing, a few years later.
I got a buddy who lives in Hull, in an old church, and they divided that into like 8 condos, and it's amazing, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. What a great space, I mean, it's just wide open and just beautiful.
I mean, small projects, but we were number 1.
Yeah. Huh, I never knew that. I knew-
So if they do a 2-bedroom and they do an office, that means they're just not putting a closet in it? Right, because then
A
it's
2-bedroom and an office?
a space without a closet that isn't called a bedroom. Right? It doesn't matter how they break it up.
We didn't wanna go down that road.
Okay.
They have to have egress for a bedroom, the window has to be the right egress and everything else to be classified as a bedroom. and to be used as a building.
All right, we're not going down that road, so I'm not even gonna, I'm
You're not gonna see too many three
No,
bedrooms.
I don't think you will, no.
All right.
Thank you.
thank you
Thanks for coming.
for your hard work, Ted and Paul and Patrick, thank you for being specific.
We have behind Patrick a roll of Mylar sheets of the Boston Skating Club plans that need to be signed by the board, and then the skating club will record those with the registry of deeds along with the special permit decision.
And I see in our package for Al, is this, people that are interested, what the tip, not tip, what's it called,
Pilot.
pilot? Is this on record somewhere? Can people out in TV land know, see this?
Is it filed somewhere?
At the selectmen? But it's common now, it's common knowledge. Right, because that was one of Al's sticking points. He wanted to know what the pilot was before he voted on the whole skate
So
thing.
we can, we don't need to.
Well, let me see, Paul, you had some other things here? Continue discussion landscaping of commercial properties and building architecture.
So it's 9:30.
It's 9:30.
Oh, I have a patient at
The
home.
board's discussion, whether you want to take that up now or postpone that discussion. It's not really pressing right now.
Well,
We could take it up if it's just in a few minutes, no?
good night, Ted, thank you.
Good night, Ted.
So, we had a discussion about a month ago about the problems that we've been having with the commercial properties and getting the landscaping that's attractive as part of the site plans, and then ensuring that they actually plant the plants that are shown on the site plan and provide the size plants that the zoning bylaw requires. And this has been an ongoing problem with most of the commercial development projects that the board's approved. And what I had suggested, and the board seemed to be receptive to this, would be to require through our regulations that are already in place, that when the applicants apply for site plan approval, that they provide the funds to hire an outside independent landscape architect to review the plans, to ensure compliance with the zoning bylaw, and to make sure that they're planting the right kind of plants that are gonna grow in that area and adapt to those conditions. And once the project has been built out, the landscape architect, so there would be a review done by a landscape architect, and they would provide the board with a letter report commenting on the proposed landscaping and making any recommended changes to the landscape plan. After the board approves the plan and it gets built, the landscape architect would go out after the plantings have been put in and inspect to make sure that they planted what they were supposed to plant, that they planted the size plantings that are required. And this has been the across-the-board problem. Instead of planting the 1.5 gallon shrub, the 3-gallon shrub that they're supposed to, that has a minimum of 30 inches, we're getting the bargain basement, 1.5 gallon shrub that, takes much longer to grow just to get to the required size. And so they would do an inspection, and either it's okay or a follow-up report. We'd have to require them to go back and do the landscaping the way they agreed to on the approved plan. The board had asked, what do you think this would cost? And so I talked to a landscape architect that I worked with a few years ago, and she said that she estimated it would be about $4,000, and I think that was kind of the high end of what she would estimate it would cost to do those tasks. The other thing that we talked about was, well, what would trigger this? It doesn't make sense to require it for every project. There might be a project that's not really visible at all from a public street, or a project that's too small to require that they provide funds in escrow to have this done. And so we kicked this around, and Pat and I talked about it, and we don't really have a good solution to that,
Yeah,
whether,
because Gomes is a small project, but there's a perfect example of why we needed somebody.
and that's a residential project.
Right.
And there was no landscaping except for a few street trees.
But there was a lot of things in this final decision that said stuff that he specifically was not supposed to touch.
Yeah, we're not talking about a residential situation.
It's
We're
only
talking about
commercial?
Commercial site plan reviews that are, triggered a planning board
Oh.
site plan approval.
What about residential developments that we,
Residential development, the planning board's role in residential, in terms of a subdivision, is you have to plant a street tree every 50 feet. We don't get involved with what happens on the private property. If it's a residential development, like a multifamily or a townhouse, like John Marini's project, or like the convent project that would, if the Board of Appeals approves those 16 townhomes on the St. Catherine's property, after the Board of Appeals approves the use, grants a special permit for the use of multifamily on that site, then the site plan will come to the planning board. And that's the residential component scenario where we would have some say about the landscape.
right, we just signed off on Power Lane.
And that had like 5 street trees, and that's it. And that was,
Except-
We can handle that ourselves. I think.
Okay,
so we're talking about McDonald's and Wendy's.
can we do it on a case by case, or do you want a dollar amount?
So Pat and I kicked around, well, what should be the triggering threshold? Where it's located, on the type of street, the size of the project, like the lot area, the number of units. And there isn't a perfect way to handle this. The way I'd like to do it is to have, after somebody submits a site plan for a project, and I take a look at it, I would like to confer with the chairman. And the chairman, and as you know, we rotate the chair, the chairman and I would discuss it and come to a consensus on whether or not we should require them to put down, $4,000 into a separate interest-bearing account to then be used to hire a landscape architect to do those tasks. At the end of the project, if there's money left over, which there probably would be in many situations, the balance of the remaining money goes back to the developer.
Okay, here's my obvious question, I'm sorry, may I? What if the developer wants to hire the one that we've got on staff?
We need a different one. So we would select,
You can't double dip.
right, you can't play both sides of, no.
You can't keep an eye on yourself.
Right. It was just I don't think it's gonna be a question that's not gonna be asked.
I think that this is interesting when you say that this will cause the applicant to pay for the landscape architect each time they don't follow the approved plans, so they're better off doing it right out of the gate. So there's an incentive for them to do so.
Yeah, and when I was out at Wendy's and BJ's counting and measuring, and how many times did we go to McDonald's counting and measuring each
And
individual
BJ's
planting?
and Short Street and Pleasant Street and
This is not
Gomes
what
and,
I should be doing. This is not what the town planner should be doing on these individual sites. And so let's have it done professionally, because I'm not a landscape architect, and neither is Patrick. And I think we will end up getting better quality landscaping. We will get plantings that are better suited to the particular locations where they're being proposed. And based on a conversation I had with a different landscape architect that's actually working on this project with Ted, he said that it is so important to dig out dirt and put good dirt in before you do a planting. And
wait, we had to go to college for that?
well, what did they do at McDonald's?
Well, I know,
They
but
didn't
I'm
bring-
not a
he
landscape
wasn't-
architect, I'm not, but I know you can't, sorry.
We're not getting that. We're getting somebody digs a hole and they stick something in. And in some cases, they don't unwrap the burlap and they don't fertilize it and, you know, they cross their fingers. We've got projects like Wendy's and BJ's where they finish the development in November and December. I had the contractor at Wendy's trying to convince me that he was gonna grow grass in February. The site is devoid of,
In Australia.
seed. What they hydroseeded didn't grow, which I didn't need a crystal ball to predict. And we need to go back in May, and they're scheduled for an inspection May 15th, and so is BJ's. So,
Once the architect signs off on this and says it's okay, is there any further check by you, just to make a quick run by, or no, or does it matter?
yeah, I think it's generally a good idea for us to check these things before they get the final certificate of occupancy from the building department, just to make sure that all the various conditions of approval have been met and that they've built it according to the approved site plan. Just another set of eyes on the site. The building department, you know, their main focus is on the structure itself, and they do count parking spaces and that kind of thing, but they're not so much looking at the landscaping.
Are there any changes on the basic landscaping that we should do? I know it's a little different from this, but, you know, we have certain criteria, and I'm just wondering if that should be revisited.
Yeah, I
at
think
the
it
same
should be
time,
reviewed.
Because,
And there was
Look
the-
at, look at the bylaw?
Yeah. It should be reviewed, and there was one thing there that I identified when we were dealing with McDonald's, when they had 97 of a particular type of holly. And I'm saying, there's a lot of different plants out there, why do we have 97 of one species? And the problem was that our bylaw requires evergreen shrubs only. It does not allow flowering shrubs, no forsythia, no lilac, nothing that drops the leaves.
well, that's the kind of thing that we
We
should be
need to
looking, we
fix,
should be
yeah.
looking at. And the other thing is, what made me think of this too, is at the skating club, they said that they were willing to put in trees as opposed to some shrubs, and they thought it was easier because it was easy to move the snow, easier for maintenance, but it also would create greater shade, and it's one of the things we've been looking at, is the hot spots and whatnot.
Yes.
So if we're gonna be putting down a place to park with hot top, it would be nice to have, it would be better to have the shade with it. So that's another reason to review this.
I think it makes sense to have a landscape architect review our existing bylaw in conjunction with this.
Agreed.
So how do we go ahead with this? Do we make a motion? Do you just, what are we doing?
So, I think there seems to be a consensus that we'd like to do this, and then that just leaves the question of, well, how do we decide which projects would trigger this requirement? And if the board's okay with the planner and the chairman consulting on a case-by-case basis and arriving at that decision.
Worst case scenario, I think that's the best way to do it. Worst case scenario, the chairman can pull the board.
Yep.
You know, straw poll the board, just, you know, what do you think? And
I'm
you
also
know,
wonder if,
that
just,
works,
you may wanna
works for me.
think of it this way, that that the projects would require it, but we could grant a waiver to it. That way the
That's a
others
good
can't
idea.
say, we're picking on you. You could say,
They're all required and then we can waive it.
it's all required, but there's a waiver process. I just want you to think of that.
That, we could do it that way. What I'm trying to avoid is
They're all gonna ask for the waiver.
we get an application, and then we schedule the public hearing, and that would be the first time that the project's being discussed. And so there'd be a delay. If within the first week of receiving an application, I contact the chairman, we have that decision made, then we could get that moving forward prior to the public hearing. And so I don't want to delay projects, that's not what this is all about. And so if we waited to a point where we got to the hearing and the board had to vote on a waiver, it would probably, delay a couple of weeks, just the design of the landscape plan.
Okay. I just wanted, I didn't want someone saying, you're picking on us, as opposed to, it's required, but we can get a waiver on it.
Well, I think if somebody came into Paul's office with a plan and said, I'm gonna present this, I'd like to go forward with this, You know, I think Paul or Patrick can look at the plan and say, this may require, by the scope of the project, you would say to them, this may require you to, you know, we have this bylaw, this may require you to have a landscape architect. And I think he'll know right from the beginning that that he may be, and then it'll be up to the, you know, the chairman and the planning office.
Is this something that has to, we can do within the planning board, or is it something that we have to go and run through town meeting?
I think it's a change of bylaw.
So, we have planning board rules and regulations for site plan review, and those exist already. And, I think it would be appropriate to create a policy and to insert it into the site plan review rules and regulations. And that way, it's available to the public and the applicants to see in writing just what it says, and it's clear, and it's not something you have to ask about. That's not
Oh,
appropriate.
no,
We have to codify it in a policy.
but to codify it, is it something we can just vote on within our, here?
So I think there's two ways of doing it. It could just be on the agenda and the board could vote on it, or we could hold a public hearing, announce a public hearing, put an ad in the newspaper that we're having a public hearing to consider an amendment to the site plan approval rules and regulations. I think that's probably the best way to do it. It puts everyone on notice.
I agree.
Gives
I
the
agree.
opportunity.
I agree.
So I think the next step moving forward would be for me to draft up this policy and figure out where to insert it, and then we'll go forward and we'll set up a hearing.
Public hearings don't hurt. Gives anybody an opportunity that wants to weigh in. You may have a bunch of, you know, you may have Mike Clemmy come in and say, no way, you know? So,
Come on down.
but, I think you have the public hearing
All right.
on it and then vote on it.
Sooner than
So
later?
We'll go through, we'll give the board a copy of it and discuss it, kick it around, and then once the board's satisfied with it, we'll then hold a public hearing.
Don't we have that?
Very good.
Very good.
All right, so we'll work on that.
And so we're gonna be signing the final site plan for Skating Club of Boston,
But we have that already.
and everyone is prepared to sign off on that? We don't need a motion, or do we?
No.
Okay.
If you wanna make a motion to endorse the plan, I think that's probably the more formal way to approach it. The plan's right before Patrick.
Isn't
Make
it-
a motion to endorse the plan of Boston Skating Club.
I have a
Second.
second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4, there's 1 dead. And we'll sign, if there's nothing else, the only thing we're gonna do is sign that
Yeah.
plan, and And-
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn with the, adjourn the meeting. Motion to adjourn.
do I hear a second? There's a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? If you're opposed, you can stay.